for the office of chairman.
Second.
Okay.
Any other nominations, or we can close nominations?
I move we close nominations.
Second.
Okay. An oral vote. Everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Commissioner Suding is now chair. You can proceed.
Okay. I'd like to consider a new vice chair, but maybe we should do that when we have a full commission. Can we do that when we just keep Commissioner Sharp as vice chair for now? Okay.
Oh, go ahead and elect him while he's not here.
I know. Next item on the agenda then is appointments to subcommittees. And we have a subcommittee list in here. It looks like we have design awards that are vacant. Anybody want to step in for design awards?
I'll do that.
Okay, that would be Mahan, Schallenberger, and Sharp. Okay. Designations, we have a vacancy.
I'll take that. Mr. Chair, these vacancies were Louise's.
This Commissioner Boucher is correct.
Taking her place, I'll just take all of them.
Okay, so
Everybody else.
okay,
Yes.
then that would be Mahan for designations, Mahan for events, Mahan for historic surveys, and Mahan for Paseo Nuevo. Is everybody else comfortable with their assignments?
Sure.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner.
The only thing is visual art in public places that Barry, Commissioner Winnick, I'm an alternate, but I teach until Wednesday. I mean, it's a Thursday, I think, and I can't.
So you want to drop off as alternate?
I need to, yeah.
Okay. Do I have another
Somebody else should be.
person that wishes to become alternate for visual art in public places?
If I'm correct, when the meeting is, do we know when it meets?
I don't know.
Visual art in public places, you know when the meeting? I know that it conflicts with my teaching, so
Okay.
anyway, I'll bow out.
They might be able to
Although I'd like
work
to be.
around it. Or no.
Fermina, do you want to?
No, I just cannot take that.
No?
And those two other very demanding committees.
They are. Have any other volunteers? Okay, well, we don't absolutely need an alternate, so we'll just leave that vacant for now.
Okay.
But strike Drury as alternate from visual arts in public places. All else remains the same?
What about the sign committee? That
We don't have
Mahan?
one.
Bill, you're comfortable with that?
I'm on.
Okay. Good.
We have Winnick as an alternate. Okay.
Okay.
Bill wants to, right?
No, I have served my term on the sign committee for years.
You mean the other bill,
Oh, the other bill.
All right.
right?
Fine.
Isn't that right?
I'm comfortable either way.
Okay, we'll leave Winnick on. Okay, then the next item on the agenda is public comment. Any member of the public may address our commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject that is within our jurisdiction that's not on today's agenda. Do I have any members of the public that wish to speak? Seeing no one, I'll close the public comment and go to the next item, which is approval of the minutes of the Historic Landmarks Commission meeting of December 18th, 2013. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second?
Okay, a motion by Sharp, second by Drury. Under discussion?
Discussion.
Yes, Commissioner Arias.
In reading over the minutes, there are several items that were left off that I think are important and should be, for the record, included in our minutes and sent forward. There should be a statement regarding the concerns about shadows, shading, and protecting of solar equipment. There was a concerns about regarding the historic element of the city and the general plan, of the city general plan and its policies, and there was a list of them. They should be considered in the discussion. The item that commissioners noted that the higher the hedges are, the less growth there is at the bottom. And also the members of the commission indicated that they wanted to see future changes for their review and comments. I would very much like to see those included in our minutes.
Okay, does anybody have any exceptions to that?
Nope.
Okay, I think those are pertinent
Yeah,
points. that we
I have them
discussed.
written out if Gabrielle would like them.
Yeah, those are comments that were not.
Okay. Anything else, Commissioner Rios?
No, that's all.
Anybody else have any changes, additions, or
Mr. Chair?
clarifications? Pardon me?
We received many letters from Paula Westbury. Do we not usually say whether it was in support or not in support?
We don't usually.
Okay.
It's on record.
All right, okay.
There is one item that I would like to clarify, and that's item 3, Plaza de Veracruz,
What page?
page 5. Bottom of the page under the motion, receive project design and final approvals with the condition that the Angeles block sand/stone pavers, I'd like to add the word or equal in color and texture shall be used. Okay?
Sure.
Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mahan will abstain.
Abstain? One abstention. Mayhem.
No, I'll abstain also.
Lavoy?
I abstain from item 9 on,
And Arias abstains from item 9.
and I think Mrs.
9,
Murray
10.
did.
Yeah, I
And-
also abstained from the
Okay.
last 2 items.
Okay, so Arias abstains from item 9, and Murray abstains from item 9. There is no 10.
And Sharp abstains from item 9 also.
Okay? All right, moving along then. We'll go to the consent calendar. Ms. Bedard.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner, Chair Seating. The consent calendar for today, Wednesday, January 15th. Item A, 2121 Garden Street, approved as submitted. Item B, 135 Ortega Street, continued 2 weeks. The comment they cannot approve chain link fencing for gate at driveway entrance or for screening for trash dumpsters. Recommendation for using 6-inch block wall for screening. Item C, 9 West Figueroa Street, was approved as submitted. Item D, Mission Creek, was granted final approval with conditions for landscaping. The applicant is to return with accurate inventory of vegetation proposed for removal. The project was continued indefinitely. Item E, the 0 block of West Mason Street, was continued indefinitely.
On item E, it was requested that the commission take a look at the mock-up of sandstone blocks that they have provided. So I'm assuming staff will schedule that and let the commission know when we're going to go look at that.
Yes, thank you. Kathy Kennedy, the planner, has requested that I ask who would like to go on a site visit, and she will follow up with an email with the date and
Okay,
time for
very good.
details.
Okay, do I have a motion to ratify the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Lavoy, second by Drury. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Mahan abstains.
Mahan abstains. Next item on the agenda is announcements or requests by applicants for continuances, withdrawal, future agenda items, anything that may be on Planning Commission or City Council that we need to be aware of.
Yes, thank you. Do have a couple announcements. First, we'd like to grant a warm welcome to the newly appointed Historic Landmarks Commissioner, Bill Mahan, and the reappointed Chair Suding. Item 2, Senior Planner Renee Brooke will return to the Planning Commission on January 23rd to present the recommended amendments to the Fences, Screen Walls, and Hedges Ordinance.
I'm sorry, what date?
January 23rd.
Thank you.
A public notice for that item was mailed on January 9th, and the meeting agenda and staff report will be available on January 16th, tomorrow. A third announcement, the item at 433 East Cabrillo was last reviewed at the Full Board Commission on December 18th. It was originally continued to today's hearing, but it has been rescheduled to the February 12th hearing. And the fourth item was regarding the site visit for Sandstone. We covered that.
Thank you.
That's on site.
Anybody else have any announcements? Mr. Hernandez?
I do. As you know, the update to the potentials list is coming January 29th in front of you. This is areas 2, 3, and 4, and 5 results of the Lower Riviera survey. There were about 9 properties in East Beach and 2 other properties that were found through historic structure reports to be significant to be added. the Lower Riviera section has about 150 individually eligible properties and 2 potential historic districts. I have been working with individual property owners, giving them copies of the forms and giving them information. And tonight at 5:30 to 6:30, I'll be doing the informational presentation that I did back in the spring for the West Downtown
Where does
Bungalow
that take
Haven.
place?
Here
In this room.
in this room at 5:30. So I will be presenting to them more information about what it means to be on the potentials list and CEQA
Very good.
information like that.
A question.
Yes.
Mr. Rios.
Plaza Rubio is included in one of these districts, correct?
Yes.
The
The
fact that-
subcommittee calling that district Mission Gardens because it
Okay.
goes all the way past the school.
The question is, that is in El Pueblo Viejo also.
Yeah.
Does El Pueblo Viejo conditions and requirements still affect, even though it's in a different district?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners have announcements or anything they want to get off their chest?
Chair Seating, I have one additional
Ms. Bedard.
announcement. Thank you. I just wanted to formalize that Commissioner Winnick will be absent from today's hearing.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Then move on to subcommittee reports. Any subcommittees meet last month?
Yes.
Commissioner Murray.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Am I on?
Yes, you're right.
Yeah. We had the designation subcommittee this just half an hour ago, and there are three landmark nominations that are wonderful. Interns, Max and Matt, have been working with Nicole and producing. They are excellent. They will be coming forward next month for consideration. So it's University Club and the Mason Temple, Masonic Temple, and the Men's Club, and the Unitarian Church.
The men's club?
The Santa,
Chapala and
the
Figueroa.
Santa Barbara Club. Yeah.
Santa Barbara.
Santa Barbara Club.
Santa Barbara.
No.
Not the University Club, sorry.
Santa Barbara Club.
Santa Barbara Club.
That's the one on the corner of, I just said it, Figueroa and Chapala.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. We'll now move on to the first item on the agenda. It's an archaeology report for 1860 Eucalyptus Hill Road. Ms. Bedard?
Thank you, Chair Seating. Dr. Glassow reviewed the report and concluded that the archaeological investigation supports the report's conclusions and recommendations that the potential for impacts to prehistoric or historic cultural resources from project implementation is low, and the standard condition regarding the discovery of unanticipated archaeological resources shall be reproduced on the plans prior to issuance of a building permit.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or discussion on that from the commission? And I don't see an applicant or public comment. I'll open public comment. I'll close public comment and look for a motion.
Move to approve the report on submitted. I'll second that.
We have a motion by Schallenberger, a second by Sharp under discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
I'll abstain on that.
We have an abstention by Mahan, an abstention by Lavoy. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item 2. It's for 1930 Emerson Avenue. It's a historic structures report. The report found that the residence does not meet any of the city's criteria for historic or architectural significance. Ms. Hernandez.
Yes, I reviewed the report and I do agree with the conclusions that the report does not qualify for as a historic resource.
Okay. Do you need to add anything?
I don't think so. This
Okay,
is,
then on to public comment.
please.
I'll open public comment, and we have Mr. Kelm DeForest. Welcome, Mr. DeForest.
Yes, good afternoon. I just wonder if the report should include, it has mentioned that it's adjacent to the new proposed historic district. Should there be anything that the design of this structure, any changes in the design of the structure? I'm not sure, is it meant, I wasn't sure, is it meant to be demolished? Or is it just to be reconstructed? But if, anyway, there should be some kind of note that any changes need to be compatible with the new historic district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Ms. Hernandez, would you like to respond to that?
This is not in the boundaries of the district, so we always have neighborhood compatibility guidelines, but this is sort of, it's across and it's sort of in its own element, and it's been so altered already, which is why it doesn't qualify. That I think we need to look at it in light of course, we always look things in light of the neighborhood,
right.
but...
Right. So it's covered under the neighborhood compatibility and other criteria. Yes, Commissioner Rios?
Is there any discussion regarding the stone wall? And that being of significance?
Ms. Hernandez?
I don't recall the stone wall being
Okay.
discussed.
Mr. Nye, do you have
Nye?
anything to...
If you look at page 1, the photographs, you'll find the wall is underneath the porch, and also there's evidently, I'm not sure,
Let's see, I didn't bring that.
thank you, it's a garage.
The stone wall underneath the porch is a relatively recent veneer.
Addition, okay.
The stone wall down on the street is probably older, but I didn't address that. And the stone walls of the garage are probably original.
That's under the new porch. But this is old.
That's obviously...
Would that be considered significant? We have indicated at times parts of projects that are significant, and I was wondering if that, under your jurisdiction, would be considered so.
We do often put the walls, especially up in the Upper East and Lower Riviera, as significant to the streetscape. We have done that several times.
Well, I would ask your judgment as to whether you as a historian, think that this is appropriate.
I would actually need a little more information. I'd want to make sure the year it was built. I would need more information to conclude that.
Yeah, that was my question of the report, is it did not include the garage, and yet the garage is original, so would that be significant, the garage? Because the garage and the stonework around it is very much typical of that area. Mm-hmm. And so even if the house, which I agree with, the house has been so altered, but the garage itself, which is very much facing the street, I think should be recognized.
Are you going to make a motion to that effect then?
No, I'm just asking Ron to, because,
I also want to clarify that on the last project we did, once we put the wall on the potentials list or noted as potential, it does bring that whole parcel back into historic landmarks. We don't divide the property up between ABR doing the house and we doing the wall. Mm-hmm. So we'd have to make sure that's noted.
We have to really determine whether or not it is significant enough and important enough to warrant that. Mm-hmm. And since the report doesn't really address it, I think what the commission is going to ask for is that the report be revised to evaluate the garage and the stonework.
We can also tag the property for the Single Family Design Review Board, noting that the wall and garage are historically significant and need to be taken into their judgments if we leave it in their world.
But you just said that if we do include...
Well, that would be adding it to the potentials list. Okay. Officially adding, and when you add something on the potentials list, otherwise we could just note it. But it wouldn't be officially on our potentials list.
But in order for us to accept this report...
It needs to address
it needs to address that, then that way we're covered fully. So I think
this is the time to get that clarified.
So does somebody want to make that motion unless you have something to add?
Well, I certainly included the garage in my report, but not in terms of its historical significance. The garage doors that are on there now are not original. They're fairly new. And that's the way it is.
And what about the stonework around it? You think it was
Well, it's
the altar
certainly
and all?
original and would appear to typify that era.
I guess
But I was just looking at the overall
The overall
property and not an accessory building.
Yeah, I see.
What's the pleasure of the commission? Oh, God, you have to state your name and...
Yes, for the record, Jonathan Leach. I'm the property owner here at 1930 Emerson. A few points. In terms of the garage, certainly the garage roof and the garage floor and the garage doors are not original. There's a handprint in the concrete apron leading into the garage with a 1969 stamp next to the handprint. So we know that that started as an earthen floor carriage house and probably had some sort of wood structure as the ceiling. It's now a concrete roof. So there are a number of elements of that that are not original to the design. As Ron mentioned, the stone wall underneath the front porch is a recent veneer, and I guess we've sort of at some level done ourselves a disservice by honoring the original design of the house, and the original comment was that the well-preserved elements of the house, including the pergola and the porch, are in the craftsman vernacular, and in fact they're all new additions to the house. So obviously we have a great deal of respect for that design and aren't interested in bastardizing it. We do have right now for review a proposal that will modify the house. We'll add a partial second story. We have no intention of modifying the garage, whether it's significant or not, or modifying the front stone wall along the street. That's not part of the plans that are under review right now. I do not have necessarily a objection to having those elements potentially identified as significant. I would prefer not to have to bring the entire project back through HLC for review at this point. I will say that we've already, to some extent, been inconvenienced by an initial finding in the neighborhood report by Post Hazeltine that identified the structure itself as potentially eligible for designation as a structure of merit. We spent a couple of $1,000s on this report so that we're not in that category. So I would beg your indulgence in, not creating another level of inconvenience for us in terms of the project review that's ongoing right now. Those are my only comments.
Okay. Pleasure of the commission.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Lavoie.
I'd move that we accept the report but request additional evaluation of the stone elements at the front of the property and return to the commission.
Can we be more specific? Front of property, say back of sidewalk?
Yes, back of sidewalk.
I would like to, I'll second the motion, but I would like to ask how soon could this report be returned?
That's up to...
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
2 week continuance?
2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Okay. So yeah, motion by Lavoie, second by Arias. You got the motion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Historic Structures Report for 920 Summit Road. This is review of a second addendum to the Historic Structures Sites Report prepared by Post Hazeltine. An original report was reviewed and accepted by the Historic Landmarks Commission on November 26, 2009, and an addendum was reviewed and accepted by the Historic Landmarks Commission on February 7, 2010. Ms. Hernandez.
Yes, I reviewed the report and support its conclusions that the project does meet the state CEQA guidelines of the MEA.
Okay. Do you have anything to add, Ms. Post, Mr. Hazeltine?
Tim Hazeltine with Post Hazeltine Associates.
Pamela Post. Post with Post Hazeltine Associates.
I don't think at this point we have anything to add. just reiterating that the project is a
You don't need to
essentially,
reiterate.
yeah, a redesign of a redesign, and which I think everyone here is familiar with.
We're just commenting.
All right, I will open public comment, and we have one speaker, Mr. DeForest.
I wanted to commend Post Hazeltine for pointing out the great importance of the Bertram Goodhue design of this building, and the way of ensuring its presence on that hillside to be observed from the highway and also from the rear. It's a very important structure. I did want to ask, and are the other elements other points that they discussed previously on this project? I'm especially interested in the differentiation between the main entrance and a member's entrance. Is that plan still part of the current plan? Thank you.
Ms. Hernandez, do you want to address that?
Maybe Post Hazeltine can. I'm not sure. I was looking at it more in original features. I'm not sure I really.
I presume, Kellen, that you're speaking of the two entrances on the north elevation.
Yes.
Essentially, what they're doing is returning the secondary entrance to a closer approximation of its historic appearance.
That would be this entry here, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
correct.
Which unfortunately doesn't show up too well in the
No.
photo, but shows up well in the drawings. And so, essentially, it's going to look a little closer to what it did. As noted in the report, the building's undergone extensive alterations since its original construction in when it opened in 1918. And so it's actually preserving the historic condition, which is two entrances on that side of the building. Of course, the porte cochere at the west end of that elevation is something that was added in the 90s by
Bobby.
Japanese. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. See no other public, we'll close public comment, bring it to the commission. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Question from Commissioner Murray.
Yes. Wanted to go back to that
Which
picture. This may be up there too. Let's see. That's on page.
This page?
Yeah. Do we know the date of these pictures? Are these?
These photos were taken in 2006 and a few in, I think, 2009. We went out and looked. There's been no changes.
Oh, okay.
Which is why
so
we
these
didn't
are
go
not
out.
old pictures.
They're not. They depict the existing condition. They're a few years old, but there's been no. We went out and
These
checked.
are not historic pictures.
They're not historic
Not
pictures.
historic
Oh,
pictures.
historic. Yes.
No,
they're not
not
historic
historic.
pictures.
Well, I
Okay.
think that tree has grown a little bit.
Yeah. Very true, Chair. That tree is growing.
The vine is covering a little bit more, but hey, you know.
Other than that,
The other thing I was
people in the
asking.
picture aren't there anymore.
Yeah, Commissioner Murray.
Yeah, on page 33, there is this mention of
How do I turn this
construct a bocce ball court of the east end of the relocated pool terrace. And
It looks like it's on, but the
this
red light's
relocated pool is mentioned in the project description in the agenda, as well as constantly relocated. And I'm wondering which pool is being relocated? Or are you talking about a new constructed pool? It was getting confusing.
It is actually a little confusing because there's the existing pool.
Right.
There's the approved plans for
Right.
a revised pool.
Right.
It's pretty much at the same location, but slightly different. And what the current project is requesting is to remove the existing pool and pool terrace and
This one here?
relocate it. Yes.
Yes.
To the east of
This
the
one,
building. East of the building. Actually, the existing pool is where the rectangular lawn is. I mean, approximately surrounded by the trees. And the reason we're very supportive of that is it moves the pool away from the facade. Because the existing pool is not historic. It's not a
So it's not really, they're not relocating it. I mean, they're not actually taking this pool and moving it over there.
It's a new pool.
They're
It's a new
covering,
pool.
yeah, so they're covering the site of the existing pool
Yeah.
and constructing a new pool. Okay, we'll just say that.
Yeah.
Don't even use the word relocate because
Okay.
it's,
We were trying to clarify that the pool
yeah,
was approved.
right,
The
right,
revised
right.
pool that was never installed was approved.
Right.
We're relocating that.
And now,
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Murray, are you finished?
let's see, maybe there's one more. Go ahead, another commissioner.
Commissioner, yes.
When I had discussions with the staff regarding this project, I was told that the only thing that we had before us was the facade of the country club building, not the pool or anything else. And I'd like a clarification on whether this is more or less of what, I mean, it's an excellent report. It went into a full history. You couldn't ask for any more information from you all. But again, I was told our jurisdiction was only the facade of the building.
Mr. Buss?
Thank you. The HLC's purview is the building itself as well as the area immediately surrounding the building.
Aha, that's more than I was told.
Yeah,
Thank
and we
you.
do have an exhibit that depicts where that boundary was determined to be, and so everything outside the boundary will be reviewed by the ABR.
Can you see the boundary? I can pass this down, but
Yeah, well, just since I picked up my agenda and packet at 10:30 this morning. Okay, so it is involved in that. You want to see it too? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
thank you, Mr. Buss.
Mr.
Commissioner
Chair,
Lavoie?
isn't that rather unusual? Normally we have purview over the entire site if part of the site has been designated.
That is correct, Commissioner Lavoie. It is unusual to split a property between the review boards. When the initial historic structures report was prepared, it was explained that the golf course itself was not historically significant, and that's why a different boundary was set for this project site.
But now that there are structures being proposed, it seems like the structures would have an impact on a resource.
What structures are being proposed?
Well,
I mean,
I'm at a loss. I did not receive the. I haven't read the report
yeah.
yet, so it's rather important
Yeah, I mean,
that I
the
read it.
structure, excuse me, the structure's new here, right?
Yeah,
Well, there are a lot
these-
of new structures. I mean,
So, it impacts within our jurisdiction, certainly. Commissioner Schellenberger?
I have had a similar problem. I had very little time to review this, but we had seen the full report 4 years ago, basically, at this point. And so I think it would just be helpful if the applicant could just explain the scope of the addendum and what's different from the report that was reviewed and approved 4 years ago.
Ms. Post, Mr. Hazeltine?
And then, what I would say is that in our report, we are cognizant of that boundary, which is, I believe, in one of our exhibits. But we did include a complete analysis of the new pool and the surrounding buildings, even though not all of those features are within the HLC purview area. And the reason we did that is that the boundary, as determined back in 2005, I think 2006, this new pool is transected by the boundary, or bisected. So we thought it was prudent to include an analysis as we would for if it was in the boundary completely. And so we included an analysis of the new pool, the buildings around it, the splash pool, the bocce ball court, as well as the sort of reconfigured or the new design for the utility buildings, which is also included in our report. And we did that because we felt they were close and they could also have some sort of visual impact on the country club. So that analysis is included, but I will say it's a fairly dense document, as I think Fermina noted. There's a lot of information.
There's a lot of processing of old and new.
When you say it is included, are you speaking in the scope of the addendum or the original report?
The original, well, it's a different project. So
is that what the trigger was?
Our analysis is an analysis of the proposed current project.
That's what the trigger would be, yeah. They changed the project, so that's why there's an addendum.
That's why there's an addendum. So we didn't rely on what we had said before.
Makes
It's not
sense.
like
Yeah.
it's really a completely new report that builds off of the significance findings of the previous report. And the previous report before that.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Lavoie, does that answer the question or clarify things for you a bit?
As long as staff has changed their position, then that we will be reviewing these other buildings, since it's part of a...
They're in our boundary, yes.
They're in
Yeah.
the sphere of influence
Yeah.
of...
I mean, even if it really just touches the boundary or, has a small footprint within the boundary, that boundary was determined because of its proximity to the building.
And there was nothing being proposed out there.
Yeah, and then if anything is, then that does affect the integrity of the building, so that's why it needs to be reviewed. Okay. Any other questions or discussion?
Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Drury.
As I recall, there's that long building, I think, with the golf cart building, and it's old, but not that old in my recollection. But behind it, there was a sandstone wall that went down that sort of an old alley, a fitted sandstone wall of a fair height. And I think that an effort was made in some of the motions back then, under the line, perhaps faulty memory, that sandstone wall needs to be saved, not in situ, but stone itself needs to be recycled because it's really beautiful fitted sandstone. Do you recall that sandstone?
Yes,
wall?
the
Yes, I
wall
know
is
where
there, and it actually is going to be, I think, repaired and retained in place. The previous project, I believe, the previous iteration of the project included some reconfiguration of the tennis courts,
Which would be
is not
this
happening.
here.
This area
The tennis
there.
courts are staying
They're staying where they are.
Now they are.
So the wall
It's
stays.
a wall
So the wall
stay.
That answers the question then. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Discussion?
Yeah, I just...
Commissioner Murray?
Yeah, I think one of the successes of the previous project was the immersion of I think it's the pro golf. Anyway, there was one of the buildings was going to be immersed down on the ground. Yeah. And then with the terracing and all that, I remember seeing that it was a lot more graceful way to really reduce the massing and the protrusion of those buildings. And your report said that the new building is okay, it's on grade, and it's okay because it's utilitarian and it's referential and all that. But I just did not see a really convincing analysis of why this particular design compared to that one that was approved is better in what sense. I think that's what was my biggest problem was, okay, you are justifying the new modifications, the new plan, but there's no sense of saying, why was the approved one okay? I guess I was having that conflict. So I just want to hear what you think about that there was that terracing and that half of that building was going to be submerged, and there was, anyway.
Part of the reason we were supportive is, one is the overall, as you noted, the overall massing and scale is it's smaller, and the overall architecture is broadly referential, to the Mediterranean aesthetic. Part of the reason we found it supportable is that the other building was going to be a two-level building, even though it was set into the hillside, and this one is a one-level structure. And
Much less.
so we thought the overall
visible.
mass, when you viewed it, we may not have articulated this in the report, but I think we were looking at it if you're on the freeway, for instance, or Old Coast Highway, and that was one of the primary public views up towards the building. We felt that making it smaller in scale and having one level was more supportable. I mean, it was as supportable. It's not more supportable because they're two different buildings with two different functions. The new building does not have a pro shop in it. Doesn't have the extensive not landscaping, but sort of hardscape elements have been really simplified. And so we thought all of that taken together made it supportable, that it met the standards because it was referential in scale and bulk and massing, smaller, which is what you want. Its architecture was broadly, as I said, sort of
Referential.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? It's the pleasure of the commission then. Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Drury, a second by Sharp. Under discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Mahan
Abstain. And Lavoy.
Lavoy abstain.
I'm going to abstain also because I read it with one set of instructions.
Okay, so Lavoy, what's your reason for
I
abstaining?
haven't read the report.
Okay, so Lavoy is abstaining because the report hasn't been delivered to him in a timely manner.
In the interest to, for the public's knowledge, for some reason there was a mess up and we didn't get our agendas.
Or the packages
Or
of
the
information.
packages or anything. I picked mine up today at 10, and you didn't get yours.
No.
I didn't get mine.
And yeah, so it's not us. There is a glitch somewhere, and we had over 2 inches to read to try and absorb before this meeting.
Okay.
And not the report at all, which I look forward to reading.
Oh, thank you.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda.
Thank you. Is it Mark?
Next item on the agenda is 920 Summit Road. This is a concept review. Comments only. It's a reduced project scope. Project requires substantial conformance determination. Okay, let me just finish this sentence and then you can begin this. Requires Planning Commission resolution number 03509. Project was last reviewed on December 9th, 2013. Mr. Lamone.
Yes, there is an auto park in the city parking lot.
Yes, that's me.
You need to move that, Mr. Lavoy. I can do it for you. You trust me.
You can find a parking spot.
Yeah, good luck.
Could I
Chair
have
Suding?
the picture that shows the perimeters again?
See if you can pick it up. May I see that?
Oh, yes, sorry. Daydreaming.
Chair Suding,
Yes, Mr. Busk.
you did read that the project was last reviewed December 2013, and I just want to note that that was reviewed by the ABR, not by
Yeah,
this
that
commission.
was way too recent.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that was their review of the golf course and that portion of the project in
Very
terms
good.
of substantial conformance. And I also want to note that the Planning Commission will be having a discussion of the substantial conformance request on January 23rd at their lunch meeting. Thank you.
Okay. This then was last seen on by this commission on February 17th, 2010. The motion was continued indefinitely. These aren't really germane, but I'll just read them anyway. Address the landscape and circulation design, particularly apt but not limited to the historic entrance. Applicant to contact city staff to schedule a future site visit by the commission to explore the reconfigured pro and golf shop and the commissioner's concerns. We did do that meeting, but we have a different project now, so it's not that germane. Pardon me. And then it was reviewed at ABR, as Mr. Buss said, on December of last year, so just over a month ago. And I think that those comments would be germane. It was continued indefinitely to the Community Development Director for substantial conformance determination with the comments. The board appreciates the substantial reduction of the building and determined that the project meets the substantial conformance determination findings. The standing seam roof color on the maintenance portion of the buildings and tractor shelters shall blend in better with the environment, possibly green in color. The new bathroom building stays in character with the other buildings and is also in substantial conformance. The board generally supports the relocation of the parking to the rear. Pedestrian and emergency access through the site should remain open to the public during and after construction of the project and in perpetuity. Does that help? Okay. So please give us your names for the record and give us a brief presentation.
Sure. My name is Steve Welton from Suzanne Elledge, and we are the planning liaison for the applicant.
Welcome.
David Van Hoy, I'm a consulting architect on the project.
Welcome.
Robert Yeager with Marsh and Associates, we're the architect of record.
Welcome. Go ahead with your presentation. Please be as brief as possible.
So you've heard a lot of the background, so I will try not to take too much time with that, but what you've seen before you is a second substantial conformity determination with a substantial reduction in the scope of the project, as you read in the minutes here. So our goal here is to get comments from you that are positive towards staff as we take it to our meeting with Planning Commission, and then following that, we'll return to you again for preliminary, hopefully, and final approval. I think I'll let David just jump in with the changes that you'll see from your last review.
Mr. Van Hoy,
Thank
here
you.
is a pointer for your use.
Thank you. If we could get to a site plan. Sure. Just an overall one.
Yeah. L1, I think it's LC1 is the best one.
We have a colored one.
That'd be great.
That's the one I wanted. Thank you.
Easier visual for everybody to understand the
Okay.
context.
Let me get oriented.
LC1.
LC1.
C as in cat.
Mr. Mahan, if I may, I'm going to just do sort of a big overview, and then Rob is going to talk about things. So you'll have plenty of time to go through this, and I don't want to take everybody's time. I want to just do a quick overview as to sort of why we're here and why this project has changed. And it really has changed in a way that results from a change in the Gulf routing plan. Those of you that saw this project before, the previous plan was moving the existing number 1T up to the higher portion of the site, creating a very wonderful dramatic hole for Gulf. However, it is the reason it precipitated the need to tear down all of the tennis courts and a significant amount of grading and then terrace them down the hill, involved the two-story, the upper story pro shop, the lower story cart barn being kind of stuffed into the hill here.
Please use the pointer, because when you use your finger, it covers what you're pointing at.
Okay, my big fat fingers.
Well,
Okay.
no, it's just on the television screen here, but finger is rather large.
So this whole area is now has the ability to just stay exactly as it is. So it reduces a substantial amount of grading and a substantial amount of tree savings and so forth, and maintains the event lawn up here and so forth. So it was that really precipitated this end, and then the club is being reimagined as a more of a sports, healthy living, kids, families, and so forth. So there's certain elements as the people are signing up and what people are looking for to stay as and to become members of this club has precipitated a few more things in terms of the recreational, the bocce ball, that sort of thing, volleyball, the pool, and so forth. So with that being said, there's very little change to the main building, but there are small changes that Rob will go through with you, and I'll be here to answer any questions as I sort of have a lifetime of this project. All of the projects that have over the last few years, and so I'll turn it over to Rob, and maybe we want to trade places.
Yeah.
How about that?
You still want this one, or you want to go to the architectural set?
The architectural set, please.
There you go.
Do you know what sheet you want to be on?
We can start with the architectural site plans, which would be the A1 series.
Pretty far back, yeah. There you go.
Okay.
Why don't you hold off on your presentation until everybody gets on the same page?
Literally.
Actually, I think I want to flip a little bit beyond this one, since this is kind of the entire.
Okay, so which
golf
page?
course. So let's just go to. I'm sorry. Oh, there's a lot here. Okay. So A1.7 is probably
A1.7.
Yeah.
A1.7.
A1.7?
Correct. Okay, everybody there? Go ahead.
Okay. As David mentioned, we're kind of talking about the area around the clubhouse, and we've, in effect, reduced the impact of what had been previously approved, largely by the modification of the golf course that no longer requires the lengthening of the first hole.
Excuse me, can we get just a small version of what was approved, so then it's much easier, just maybe the smaller one, it's just easier to refresh our memory what was approved looking at the new one.
Yeah.
Yeah, just on this side.
Yeah, where were that exhibit I handed out to you? That actually has the original plan.
Commissioner Arias had it. The boundary exhibit right there.
Right here.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, okay, that's good. So
Okay, so
we
we're
sort of
just
get a sense of what was approved and what
There's
was
the L
not
tennis
new.
courts that were
Okay.
proposed.
So there's essentially three components to the modified submittal. The first is the golf cart storage facility, which, as you described earlier, was a two-story element that also corresponded to the relocation of the tennis courts. The new cart storage facility would replace the existing building. It's set at the same grade and the same location on site as the existing building, and it's constructed as a lower building, less visible, and more consistent with the architectural vernacular of the Spanish colonial revival style. The second component is the clubhouse. I'm sorry, I can wait if there's any questions specific to that. The second component is the clubhouse itself. The changes from the package that had been previously approved are minimal. We're still going to restore the historic entrance and the Chirigaresque detailing that's overhead at that entrance. We're still adding a small courtyard to the west end of the property for the women's terrace. And we've restored some of the pergola, the timber trellis outside the building that had been scheduled for removal in the previous submittal. The third component of the revised submittal is the revision to the pool configuration. Previously, the pool had been shown here. It was not a historic element. The ownership preferred a more resort-style pool consistent with the re-envisioning of the amenities for the club. And so removing the pool from in front of the historic facade of the building allowed the focus to remain on that historical architecture. And the new amenities or the new facilities that correspond to the pool, which are restrooms and a snack bar, are designed to correspond to and be referential to the architectural style of the clubhouse. So that's really that comprises. There's also, with regard to parking, any of the parking that's been impacted by the work that I just described is being replaced in kind to the north of the clubhouse.
Okay. Quickly show us then the elevations of this structure and this structure.
Okay. I believe that's the A3 series.
Further back?
Yes, the clubhouse is first. So this is the approved. Those were, actually, I take it back. This is both.
Approved.
This is both.
Okay, so we're going to start with the golf club, or the golf cart storage, A3.7.
Right.
A3.7. Wait until everybody's on the
Sure.
page, please. That's good, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
So the facility that had been approved with the prior submittal was both a golf cart storage facility that was partly sunken in grade and an elevated golf pro shop that was above it. And both of those sat higher on the hill than both the current and the proposed cart storage facility do. So the new cart storage facility occupies essentially the same footprint. It's actually slightly smaller than the existing golf cart storage facility. And it's functionally more efficient, smaller. That original building was not intended for the purpose that it currently serves. So this is more efficient. Functionally, it's smaller. It's lower. It's about 40% lower than the existing building. And it is stucco facade, clay tile roofing, and the same sort of detailing that's consistent with the Spanish colonial clubhouse.
Talk about the door, garage door.
So the garage door is actually recessed behind the arch, so while it's visible in the elevation, it's sort of beyond and not visible unless it's about 12 feet.
Okay. All right, then going on to
Before you move on, could we see again the facade of the main building?
The clubhouse?
Yes, please.
Which side?
The rear, the south side.
Ocean side?
Ocean, or either any side, actually.
Okay. And, you know, it would be helpful if, or do you already have a long elevation showing all three buildings?
We do not.
Okay. That's not it. Sorry. This would be the north elevation, Mr. Lavoie?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. A3.5.
Okay.
We're just spending a couple of seconds on that.
Yeah.
The proposed is the one that's on the top.
Correct.
Basically, there's hardly any changes from proposed to approved.
Precisely.
Okay.
There is, but that's okay.
Pardon me?
Now look at that.
This here.
Yeah, okay. Okay, move on.
Okay. Going to the snack shop, is that going to be after this?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to A3.8. Okay, so proposed.
So this
is all proposed?
Yes. Well, there's...
In other words, you're not showing the approved.
Yes, because,
on here.
well, approved, there
was.
The approved, there was an existing pool bathhouse that was just being renovated.
I recall.
So these are proposed new structures, and they're relatively small in scale, and again incorporate the same sort of vernacular with the smooth stucco, the sloped clay tile roof, the stucco columns and timber pergolas, the rectangular punched window openings, and the clay chimney, the stucco chimneys. So just kind of walking through them, you've got the snack bar. So details 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all of the pool structures. So this half of the page is golf course amenities.
Okay. All right. I think that covers pretty much everything. Unless I'm missing something. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Mr. Busk. I skipped over you. Did you have anything you needed to? No? Okay. I want to remind the commission that this is here for comments only. I'm going to be opening public comment. I have 3 speaker slips. First one is John Wyman. Mr. Wyman will be followed by Don Lucian. Mr. Busk, would you turn that microphone around? Or no, go ahead.
This is okay?
That's fine.
That one's just turn it on. It's not on though. Just hit the
Push that button.
There you
go. Good afternoon. I'm John Wyman. I'm the chair of the Men's Golf Committee at Montecito Country Club.
Welcome.
And I'm here to speak in support of this revised plan. It honors the building, the historic characteristics of the building, and keeps it as attractive as it is now, and adds some function which the members are happy to see. And I think I can say with confidence that it enjoys a great deal of support by the membership.
Thank you. Ms. Lucian will be followed by Ken Roby.
It's Dawn Lucian.
Don Lucian. I'm sorry, what did I?
Well, you said
okay,
a little
Ms. Lucian.
differently.
Don Lucian.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. I have grown up in Santa Barbara since I was 5 years old. My father was a developer. And I've been past committee chairman for the Women's Golf Committee at Montecito, and I am one of the signature members that helped pay for this new addition. So I've been waiting for it for about 7 years to come to pass. And I am impressed with the staff who have put this together. They've always considered the architectural integrity of Montecito Country Club. They're not changing that. I used to take tap dancing lessons up there when I was 5 years old, and it's still pretty much the same. And they intend to do that. I'm very impressed with the scale back of the plan, the fact that they're not going to be carting dirt in and out. They're very respectful of the neighbors. And I think it's a project that's going to really beautify Santa Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Ken, I believe it's Roby, followed by Terry Janeway.
Good afternoon. My name is Ken Roby.
Welcome.
I've been a member of Montecito Country Club for about 30 years, and former chairman of the men's committee, and also pleased to have worked with your committee in the past as chairman of the previous renovation done by the previous owners, and where we helped to restore the building, the changes to the tower and the new the entry and that sort of thing, and here to ask for your support. Appreciate your support.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Janeway. I have no other speaker slips, so I'll close.
This is Mr. Janeway.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, that was Mr. Roby, Mr. Janeway.
Ken can speak for me, but
Terry Janeway, thank you.
Terry Janeway, I'm a member of Montecito Country Club. I'm the past golf committee chairman and current vice chairman. Been a member for 15 years and moved here from Chicago 15 years ago. Remember the building up on the hill and capturing our attention and its its splendor back in the day, and it was under construction at the time, being put back in. Speaking for many of the members that as the golf committee chair, I think we're very excited about the restoration back to the glory. If I think of the Wheelbarrow and the Mission that just went through the Granada Theater, and I think of our building on the hill, is very much similar to that in the way it sticks out and kind of is a moniker on the landscape of Santa Barbara. So the membership's excited. These are mainly just improvements, not changes. And I think that I saw an article back in the day and it said the old lady on the hill, and I think we're really looking for that to be restored. So
they're talking about the other old lady.
Yeah, right. So we appreciate your consideration and support.
Thank you, Mr. Janeway. I'll close public comment now and bring it back to the commission. Again, I'll remind the commission that this is comments only.
Mr.
Concept
Chair.
review and reduced project scope. Yes.
Could we please have the air conditioning cut down?
It's either too hot or too cold.
Well, I must be directly under it because it's cold.
Mr. Schallenberger, any questions for the applicant?
I have one. Just on the elevations, this may be a comment for future reviews, but can you give us some type of alignment for point of reference from the approved golf pro shop to the proposed cart storage? These two elevations, the trees are everything's different. I don't see where we are in space, sort of left to right.
The comment over here, so it's on TV.
So
the existing building is shown on one of them, but I don't see.
There's a reference point. There's a reference grade in the approved tennis pro shop building. So the lower level was at elevation 160.
Right.
Okay. And the upper level was at 170, and so the ridge, the highest ridge line was at 187, give or take. The new design, the single floor level is at elevation 162, and it's a little difficult to read, but I believe the ridge line is 183.
Yes.
So it's actually about 4 feet lower than the previous design.
But didn't you say this was on the same footprint?
It's on the same footprint as the existing cart door.
Right.
The existing there
So there's
today.
an iteration in between when we proposed the new carts.
So it would have been much shorter in the previous, from left to right. I mean, if you just jump up, there's an additional 50 feet.
Well, a portion of the previous design was subterranean, so the visible portion that you can see is smaller, yes.
So there was demolition of the old that would have brought it back to that point. Okay, I see. Thank you.
Commissioner Arias, any questions?
Well, no, I'll make a comment.
Commissioner Lavoie?
No questions.
Commissioner Murray?
No questions.
Commissioner Sharp?
None.
Commissioner Mahan?
I have a question, maybe to staff. I'm looking at the Planning Commission resolution, which was included in the... Excuse me.
Your microphone's probably not clipped to your shirt.
There we go. Is that better?
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking at the Planning Commission resolution, which is part of this proceedings. And on the first page, item number, it's E3, it says in the beginning at the end of the first sentence, it does not involve any additional residents or workers. That's a condition. And then on the last page in C1, in describing the approved development, it says the new maintenance building will have a second floor with a residential unit, and then farther on down it says there's 1,320 square feet net new building area with one new residential studio. How does that work? That's the question.
Go ahead.
So our initial proposal did not include any employees, but at Planning Commission, there was a request of the Planning Commissioner to add an employee unit on top of the maintenance building. We're no longer constructing the vast majority of the maintenance building, so we're requesting to no longer construct that. But Alice, I don't know if you had anything further you wanted to add, but that's basically what's happened. We are no longer proposing an employee unit.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Drury, any questions?
Yes, maybe I missed it. This is rather confusing, but were there changes proposed, as I recall, to the windows in the semicircular clubhouse? That stands out with those curved windows. I think there were changes proposed, or we were going to bring them back to what they were. We were showing old photographs. Does that recall that at all?
Yeah.
Anybody recall?
Excuse me, just looking to the elevation and then...
The south elevation you're talking about?
Yes, the south elevation.
There we go. Okay. Go ahead.
There it is.
Yeah. So is that going to just remain as is? You won't. As I recall, there was a desire to bring it back to the way it was in old photographs.
The rotunda, as
The rotunda.
we refer to it, is not part of the original construction, not part of the original building. The windows that are in it were an attempt at the time, I think, to be referential to that architecture. We are not proposing to make any modifications to those units.
All right, thank you. The only other question I have, is there any, I talked about the sandstone wall behind the existing golf cart storage. Is there any suggestion about recycling the wood in that building, which is, as I recall from wandering around, and they're pretty good wood? I mean,
It's crisp, anyway.
What's that?
It's crisp and well dried.
Well seasoned, but probably first cut timber, and I don't know.
I remember that walk around as well myself, and certainly the recycling will happen with that and anything else on the property. Right. There's all this the stone wall behind the existing stone wall behind the proposed golf cart storage building. 90% of that is going to stay exactly where it is. There's a small section that's going to be dismantled for some access to the that would be the east end of the building. But it will be reused on a wall that's planned for within this project.
Okay. Commissioner Schallenberger, any comments?
It's a lot to digest in a short amount of time, but generally supportive. Yeah, I can appreciate the architecture is consistent, and I don't think there's any question that there is no negative impact on the resources. When thinking about a substantial conformity determination and a reduction in scope, sometimes reducing scope doesn't necessarily mean conformity, but in this case, I think it certainly does. The only sort of architectural knee-jerk reaction I had was on the cart storage building. The roofs seem fairly huge and uninterrupted architecturally.
I'm sorry, let me get to that page real quick.
The main portion of the building, I should say.
A37?
So A37, yeah. This is just a comment that these structures, that seems, I'm trying to envision it as exists. If you're looking at it from the golf course, I think you're looking at a huge expanse of roof, but broken up by the trees. I understand that. And then also on the east and west elevations, it looks a little too formal to me as far as strict symmetry about the ridge line there. Those two, the two sort of bump outs in the structure is strictly symmetrical and seems a little more formal than the architecture that exists on the site. Otherwise, it all looks very nice.
Thank you.
Commissioner Arias.
Well,
My only comment, I think, a couple of comments are that I think there's a lot of sensitivity that was done with this design, and I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to a landscape plan that's more specific than what I've seen. But I think basically, it's a supportable design.
Commissioner Lavoie?
Could you turn back to the elevation of the main existing building, please? You had it up just a second ago. Thank you. That one.
A33?
A33.
The changes to the site that are currently proposed are commendable. Thank you for backing off and preserving the characteristics of the site as they are. The proposed changes to the main building are also commendable in the removal of non-historic decoration and frosting that was awkward when it was approved, actually. The size, bulk, and scale of the proposed buildings are acceptable and commendable, actually. You did a very good job of capturing just a general vernacular Hispanic architecture. However,
And all the shoe drops.
Now the shoe drops. The existing building is a particular expression of Hispanic architecture that is extremely strong. It's very definable and very attributable to that particular architect. And this is a lovely example of what he can do. What you're proposing, though, while generally acceptable Hispanic, vanilla Hispanic, would probably be fine on any other site but this one. To me, it's just not referential enough to the style of the main building, and it needs to be so that it's all part of a campus. Not an exact copy, but more referential too, and not just in a general, they're both Hispanic. Look at the existing building, how it's very asymmetrical, it's almost medieval in its simplicity. It's got blank walls and flat ceilings, or flat roofs, and parapets, and a little bit of Sugaresque architecture frosted on. So just residential Hispanic next to it doesn't work for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Lavoie. Commissioner Murray?
I completely agree with those comments. While I also support the project, I find that long roof of that building there on the west side not in keeping with the character of this building. Even though they are, I think the report also said that conceptually by the standards, Secretary of Interior standards, they meet all that concept. But now that you're getting into these buildings are going to be permanent part of this, and I think I so agree with Mr. Lavoie that they need to be made part of the campus. If Mr. Goodhue could come forward, he can recognize them and say, "Aha, they honored me." And right now, the buildings really do not honor him in his expressions. So, but you're on your way. I mean, the broken up small buildings are really good, especially on the east side. It makes that area, sort of a modern functional area with a swimming pool and all that. So I think you got the broken up there. They just need to be a little bit more refined, especially that east elevation as you come in and see it. I really also agree with all the good things you're doing to the main building and retaining the pergolas and removing that swimming pool is just really wonderful. Getting it out of in front of that rotunda, I think is just wonderful. So I really commend you for that. But it's just that when you do good things like that, like Louis Boucher would say, we have more chance to do the best. And I think you are there.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Murray. Commissioner Sharp, anything to add?
Well, I hate to be so agreeable, but the cart storage, pardon? The cart storage building does need to be broken up, and the original one is very nice, but this is certainly not in keeping with what we could or would approve. But other than that, as I said, the comments are right on.
Commissioner Mahan?
Oh, I'm not going to comment.
Commissioner Murray, or Drury?
Drury or Murray.
That one down there.
I agree with all the comments, and I think that the clues to what to do with looking at the south elevation on 8.3.3 and the clarity on the proposed south elevation. No? Okay.
Captured forever in our memory.
The clarity of the east end of the south elevation, the way those spaces are defined, that's what needs to happen on the golf or storage building.
Okay. I do have one comment, and it I think just needs to be resaid. Other commissioners have said it, but this building here, and I'm going to call that the pool building, the snack shop, really does need to respect and refer to the main building. It is the first thing you see when you come in, as Commissioner Murray said, and it just is not the same quality of architecture as the original main building. So those two things really need to talk to each other better. What we're not seeing in any of the elevations is this service yard, and if I remember correctly, it's a 7-foot walled service yard, and so that reads as kind of part of the building, and then you have this stuck off the end of that, and there's no language, no dialogue happening between the two buildings. There needs to be stronger dialogue. Any other comments? Okay, then Ms. Feliciano, do you need me to summarize? Okay. The commission is generally in favor of the revised proposal. The project seems to be conforming to the previous proposal. The proposed cart storage north and south elevations in particular have an unbroken ridge, and the architecture needs to be broken up. The symmetry of the east-west elevation on the cart barn could be softened, thank you. The design is sensitive to the environment and the setting. It is sensitive to the character of the site. The landscape plan is needed. It may have been provided, but we didn't review.
That's going to be later.
The size, bulk, and scale is acceptable. The proposed Hispanic architecture is not referential enough to the original building. The proposed architecture needs to honor the original architecture. Refine the east elevation of the pool house snack shack to make it more in keeping with the original main building.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If you would accept a word substitution instead of honor, use the word emulate.
Emulate the original architecture. That was the proposed Hispanic architecture is not referential enough to the original building. What did you just say? Emulate the original architecture. You said honor in the beginning, didn't you?
That was my word.
That was you. Okay, sorry. Emulate the original architecture. All right. So it's just comments. That's all you're going to get from us today. If that's not enough, we can.
Is it helpful to make sure that we did submit landscaping and we did some detail? I wanted to see if it's adequate for your next round of review for preliminary.
Not at this time, no.
In terms of detail.
No.
That's not in the agenda.
Next time you need
not
to include your landscape architect up here during the presentation.
And here it comes.
Okay, we are Yahoo ahead of schedule. The next item on the agenda is going to be item number 5, and that'll be 1318 Morrison Avenue. We are going to be in recess for 10 minutes. We will reconvene at 3:04. Meeting of January 15th, 2014. Next item on the agenda is project design review, item number 5 for 1318 Morrison Avenue. Action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. This requires neighborhood preservation ordinance findings and compliance with staff hearing officer resolution number 074-13. Project was last reviewed by this commission on October 9th, 2013, and I will read those comments. It was continued indefinitely to the staff hearing officer with positive comments. The proposed modification is aesthetically appropriate. The proposed modification does not pose consistency issues with El Pueblo Viejo design guidelines or the neighborhood preservation ordinance. The majority of the commission found the design to be generally approvable and supportable. Additional attention should be given to the detailing of window proportions, rafter tails, and other architectural elements. The motion was made by Lavoie, was seconded by Drury. Boucher, Murray, Suding were absent. Motion carried. So, staff have anything? No? Okay. Do you?
Well, just acknowledge the staff hearing officer resolution that was approved on November 27th, 2013. Resolution number 07413.
13. Okay. All right. Go ahead and introduce yourselves for the record and give us a brief presentation.
Brian Pollard, architect. Got the owner.
Hope Firestone.
Welcome.
Okay, so the last time we were here, basically we were going through conceptual for comments to go for our modification, and we brought a entirely different design the last time from the previous proposal, and as was mentioned in the minutes, that it was it wasn't mentioned in the minutes about this, but we were very happy to find that the board was generally comfortable with the direction we had taken with, as we called it, airplane bungalows. It's not a term that we came up with, but it's a term that was really suitable for, we believe, this addition to this project. And so at this point, I certainly can go through the project, but basically what we did different from the last time was studying the window proportions and basically the mutton bar designed with around the building to make sure that we were all comfortable with that and felt that they were appropriate for the massing. So I could, if you would like for me to go through the...
Briefly, yes.
Sure. Okay. So, sure, A3, the site plan. Basically, we've got...
Please use the pointer when you're pointing, just so that your hand doesn't block what we're looking at.
Okay, the Morrison Avenue, that's a cul-de-sac, a short street that comes along here. The project sits at the end of that cul-de-sac. Basically, the existing footprint is as exists, along here. We're adding 30 square feet with this fireplace portion on the first floor and approximately 130 square feet, 3.5 feet from the back of the project on the first level. And then there is a second story portion to this, which I can move to after this.
Okay, so this is the floor plan.
8.4.
This is a portion. This is an addition here where the fireplace that I mentioned on the previous sheet. This section here is also new on that first level. Otherwise, everything else is within the footprint of the existing residence. And then the second level is this portion right here that sits over the existing residence. What was worked out from the initial design was incorporating the stairway underneath the existing roof. That allowed for, I think, all of this to come together as nicely as it did, which you can see here, the dash line. It kind of cuts in underneath the existing single-story roof to find itself basically central to allow for you to get into this second-story space. So these are the elevations. The front elevation as you stand on Morrison. This portion here is the existing single-story portion of the residence, and this area here is the proposed second-story addition. This beyond is an existing garage. And as you can see with the southeast elevation, that is looking from the driveway of the property.
Did you change any of the proportions of windows on these?
These drawings I did not. Okay. These are the rendered drawings, but I did change them on the CAD drawings.
So just for clarity's sake, this shaded area on the left, that's the laundry room?
That's a laundry room beyond in the back.
Okay, thank you.
There's a rear elevation, another side elevation?
Yes.
All right. Why don't you show us the elevations then where the windows, the proportions of the windows are accurate. We're on 8.9.
So these windows that are kind of a clear story above the bed wall have a cross-member mutton bar that was on the previous drawings, and the existing laundry room window also has a cross mutton bar configuration on it. And so we carried that. This is where there was a change. We basically changed the size of this window for a couple of reasons. One being that so that they could put a TV under it. It used to go down below 2 feet from the floor. So raised that up, changed the configuration, and made that same size as the laundry room window. The other area that changed proportion and a breakup configuration was these kitchen windows here, these pair of windows here, and also this one. This is a detail that comes from the original front window, so kind of carrying that same mutton bar arrangement into these other windows.
Okay. 8.8.
And then basically it was these were just double hung windows without any kind of breakups, along with these two. And so we changed the mutton bars and the proportions by a little bit so that all these kind of laid out that we felt comfortably how that related to the rest of the windows in the building and carried that same detail through. Okay. That's pretty much it.
Those are just photos.
And then all the eaves and brackets, rake details, all that is going to match the existing.
Okay. Do you have details of that at all?
I do not.
Okay. All right. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, it does.
All right, then I'll open public comment, and having no speaker slips, I will close public comment and go to the commission. Start with Drury. Any questions, Commissioner
I
Drury?
have no questions.
Commissioner Mahan, any questions?
Since this is my first meeting, I'm not going to comment, but I wished I could.
Do you have any questions?
I think it's lovely.
Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Sharp, any questions?
No questions.
Marie?
Yeah, so these mountains that you're talking about, what's the material? Just
It's going to be wood.
Just wood,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Lavoie?
Yes,
Questions?
yes, one. Are the proposed windows still double hung or single hung?
No, they aren't. They're casement.
Casement.
Including these?
Those are existing.
Those are existing. Okay.
Existing double homes.
And these are all casement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Arias, any
Not at this
questions?
time.
Commissioner Schallenberger, any questions?
Just clarify on the roof plan, A5.
A5.
There's a 2 and 12 roof above the pantry.
Okay, 1 second. A5 and the telephone ringer, you will turn it on. Your microphone on.
Yeah, I just did.
Okay.
Thanks. I'm not sure where the building line below that is. It looks like, I don't know if the intent was for that eave to only be a little 6-inch overhang on that little roof to align with the corner of the building beyond.
Can you point to where you're talking about over here?
Small point, but just want to understand it. So if I understand right, the building is under here somewhere like so, but does that leave only this little bit of an eave as an overhang? That's the intent?
That was the intent.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, Commissioner Drury, any comments?
Yes, I think it's a really lovely use of space, and the walls and fenestration is terrific. I think it's a lovely addition. I support it wholeheartedly.
Okay. And Commissioner Mahan says it's lovely. Commissioner Sharp?
I agree. It's a great addition. My only comment is, should the windows that are on either side of the existing fireplace also have that little mutton bar detail like the front window does? One, and then just...
Here.
Well, actually,
You want us to see the ad, you're right.
Shouldn't there be the same, one more in the middle, yeah. I think that would be more traditional and I like that,
Interesting.
rather than just one single piece of glass. Other than that, it's a great project.
Thank you.
And that was only a suggestion. Just seeing that I recall seeing that more in this era.
Commissioner Murray?
Yeah, I also agree. It's just that these windows, you said they're going to be casement. I mean, they're fine. It's just that it's not a style for casement. It's really more double hung. So it looks weird when you say it's going to be casement for me. But
We could do a third, 2/3 double hung.
that would, yeah.
To be able to make the operation and still get. I agree with that.
Yeah, that if that's okay, that would be a good thing. Otherwise, I'm not going to break the project. It's just that it's traditionally would be read as a double hung. So.
Commissioner Lavoie?
I agree with Commissioner Murray. And would add, it's a very nice project. Thank you. Very well done.
Commissioner Arias?
Very supportable project.
Commissioner Schallenberger?
Yeah, if you had details, we'd give you final, I think, today. So.
Well, I was going to ask that since everything's to match existing, do we still
Maybe final on consent,
Okay.
Yes.
The
Yes,
contractor
I would
needs
support that.
Okay, yeah, all right,
Yeah.
so,
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
yes, Commissioner Mahan.
There are no gutters or downspouts? No gutters or downspouts on the existing house?
There will be.
There will be.
So that can be brought to consent as well. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll summarize the comments and look for somebody to make a motion, and that person needs to use the goldenrod cheat sheet here, halfway down, under Neighborhood Preservation Ordinance findings. Okay, so this is a nice addition. It is very well done. Add mutton bars to the top of the windows flanking the fireplace. Double hung windows are more traditional and more appropriate. Details, including gutters and downspouts, can return to consent for final approval. Somebody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Motion.
Making the, with those comments, and making the findings that the commission has reviewed the proposed project and found the project is consistent and commendable with the required neighborhood preservation ordinance findings.
Okay.
Second.
Yes.
And final.
And final.
So final. No.
No.
Project design approval.
Project
and then
design
final
approval.
to return on consent.
Second.
Okay, so then a motion by Lavoie and a second by Drury. Is there one other thing that we needed to read into the record, the compliance with the staff hearing officer resolution?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Seating. I was just going to mention that the condition of approval from the staff hearing officer, subject to the following condition, that all fences, hedges, walls, and screens shall be maintained in compliance with the Santa Barbara Municipal Code, Section 2887-170.
Okay, so the maker of the motion okay with that?
No.
No?
Yes.
Motion yes. They're going to come on the plans. The final details will come on the plans. So we had a motion by Lavoie and a second by Drury. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Mahan will abstain.
Mahan abstains. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I want to thank the board for making this project what it is.
Oh, you're welcome.
Kind of our job.
Directed us to go there, and
You're welcome.
we're very happy.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, is this 10-day appeal period? Should that be announced?
For project design approval, yes. There is a 10-day appeal period on this motion. Is appealable to City Council.
It's almost like you've done this before.
It's the one thing I always forget.
Because your heart is not in it. You don't want to appeal, right?
I beg your pardon? Brian, Mr. Pollard, do you want this to be indefinite or 2 weeks?
Indefinite.
Okay, it's an indefinite. Thank you, Ms. Gantz. I knew she was watching. Ms. Gantz is out on medical leave.
Oh, she's not really out.
She's here virtually.
She's here in spirit and the ether. What? We're going to take a 5-minute break. The next item will be.
She kicks people.
What?
Next item will be 1200 block of Laguna, or 1200 Laguna Alley. We'll reconvene at 3:26.
The things that you did that I used to forgive, you'll never change as long as you live.
2014
Mr. Chair.
Historic Landmarks Commission meeting. The item before us at the moment is item 6. It's the 1200 block Laguna Alley. This is a proposal to replace existing impermeable asphalt paving with permeable paving to comply with the city's stormwater management program. Action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. The project was last reviewed on December 18, 2013. Excuse me. The motion was continued indefinitely with the following compliments. The Angeles sand/stone pavers, or equal in color and texture, in a herringbone pattern would be supportable. Add tree pockets to the extent possible, allowing for adequate fire truck access. The motion was made by Lavoie. It was seconded by Winnick with an 8-0 vote. Motion carries. please introduce yourself for the record and give us a brief presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Cameron Benson. I'm the City Creeks Division Manager.
Welcome.
I'm here with the rest of our project team. I have Lori Yanez, who is a project engineer with the Public Works Department, and Tim Burgess, who's a Water Resources Specialist with the Creeks Division. Michelle, did you want me to explain something about this? Okay, we did submit 3 sets of plans. They didn't make their way over here, so somebody's running over to grab those, and we'll have all 3 of them. But this is the 3rd time we've been to the commission. I think you're all familiar with the project. This is alley on the 1200 block of Laguna Street. It's about 2/3 of a block long, 238 feet long, 20 feet wide, and after the last meeting with the commission, we went out into the field and met with the neighbors to discuss the possibility of locating trees within the right-of-way here. And for a number of reasons, we found that placing trees or tree wells into this narrow alleyway was not going to be feasible. So we are back today with an alley that shows a herringbone pattern using the sandstone block, or it's equal in color and texture throughout the alleyway.
Okay. Is there anything on the second sheet? Or?
Just detail on the second sheet.
Okay. I will open public comment, and I have one speaker slip from Mr. Dennis Allen. Mr. Allen.
Dennis Allen, the neighbor at 320 East Victoria.
Push that button right there.
Okay, thank you. We abut the alley at the end, furthest end from Laguna Street. We had a very productive meeting, I think, with Cameron Benson and Tim from the Creeks Department. And we basically, I think, are in agreement that part of the herringbone pattern will be retained by a 6-inch border around the entire alley, and that'll go down and, of course, retain the gravel as well. And the one thing that we requested, and I think the Creeks Department was comfortable with, and I think would fit with some of the discussion we have had so far on this project with the Historic Landmarks Commission, is to break up the herringbone pattern a little bit with some 12-inch wide strips across the alley. And it would be the same color as the concrete that would be the border, the 6-inch border, along the edges of the alley. So at the beginning and end of the alley, there would be a 12-inch wide strip, and then maybe 3 or 4 places across the alley to just break up that herringbone pattern a little bit. Could be the same color as the pavers, or another color that would harmonize with that would give some interest as well. So I think that was a main part of the discussion, as well as we had quite a bit of discussion also about the tree wells and so forth, but that seems to be a very difficult issue at this time with the city budget for the recreation department and maintaining trees. So we're willing to just go forward with the paving part. So, and I think I can speak for some of the other residents on the alley as well. We had 2 other residents that participated in those discussions. So thank you for your consideration.
And thank you for meeting and having that discussion. That's an important part of the process. I will close public comment and go to the commission for questions. Does Commissioner Drury have any questions?
I do not.
Commissioner Mahan, Commissioner Sharp.
None.
Commissioner Murray. Commissioner Lavoie.
No questions.
Commissioner Rios.
Yes. What are the reasons that made the tree wells infeasible? Would you care to identify them so we would know in the future?
Sure, absolutely. I'd be happy to. Since we've been here 3 times, I was trying to be brief. One is when we went to the fire department the first time, they asked us to have 20 foot clear through the alley.
The fire department, I remember.
When we went back to them, they said they thought they could reach the back of this building if we had 20 feet clear on the first 90 feet of the alley. So approximately a little more than about 40% into the alley. And then, as Mr. Allen mentioned, the Parks Department now has a deficit in their street tree maintenance budget. So they had concerns about ongoing maintenance of trees and having budget for that, as well as liability for the trees. And then as a design issue, we went into the alley and tried to identify any location that might be suitable for a street tree that would not block somebody's ingress and egress in a vehicle from their property, and we couldn't identify a single location. This is it's 20 feet wide, so they're substandard vehicle lanes in both directions as it is, and then further constraining that would not allow people to back out or pull into their driveways or garages.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schomburger, any questions?
Yeah. So is that a fact that the edge restraints are 6 inches wide?
Correct.
That's not indicated, by the way. What is the overall length of the alley? 200 and what?
It's I have two measurements that would come out with so far: 236 feet or 238 feet.
Okay. And then, why doesn't this proposal incorporate your meeting with the neighbor?
Well,
the border is not shown.
Where are the breakups?
Or the breakups.
With regard to a break, well, what we had done in the past where we've installed these projects in other locations is we put those breaks where there is a grade break, or there's if you're in a sloped location, we have each basin set up where the subgrade of the basin is perfectly flat, so that we can maximize infiltration in those areas. And so sometimes what we'll identify as a location where we want to create a break, so we don't have to excavate as deep and use as much aggregate underneath the pavers. And so with this design, what we were going to do was have those edge restraints subsurface underneath the pavers, unlike what we've done in other locations. And I think when the neighbors went and looked at where we've installed these in other locations, they liked the look of having the edge restraints up to the surface for that breakup. So part of
the proposal, though, is to break this up.
We would break it up. What we were looking at here was something where the edge restraint would be under the pavers, but they've asked us to bring them up. We just don't know where that would be at this point until we have the survey. I mean, we've had city surveyors out there. We just don't have the work back from them yet to know exactly where that would be.
Great, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. What color is the edge restraint?
Edge restraint would be colored concrete to match the pavers.
Okay, so have you picked a Davis or a Schofield color at all? Okay. And what is the modulation of the breakups? What would you guess? Maybe 20 feet on center, 30 feet on center? I know you don't have the grading plan yet. You're not quite there yet, but what are you thinking?
I suspect we would probably have one or two breaks in something this length and this slope.
Okay.
And what we discussed with the residents was that they would not necessarily be symmetrical. The design that the residents came up with had breaks on some of the property lines. Mm-hmm. So here, and here, I think. So they were looking at property lines on this side of the alley. But I think we would be looking at sort of the function and the cost.
Okay. All right.
One last thing about including those breaks is it does increase our cost. You know, if we did a 1 foot border instead of a 6-inch border, obviously we have increased construction or concrete costs. But the greater cost is when we put one of those breaks in, it makes it much more difficult to access the different basins to get for the contractor during construction to get the aggregate in and to compact the aggregate. So you have to, once you've built your concrete edge restraints, you know, they're 18 inches tall, and you have to get a 10-ton vibrating
It's doable.
roller up and over.
It's doable.
It's doable, but the concrete breaks, and so you're in there, and then you're patching your concrete, and you've got maintenance problems into the future.
All right. Comments. We'll start with Commissioner Drury.
Comments?
Yes.
Oh, I like this design. I was caught unaware. I was going to ask questions, but I don't have any of those either. No, I like this design a lot. I think it's sensitive, and I'm really glad there's no trees, actually.
Okay. Commissioner Mahan, do you want to? Okay. Commissioner Sharp?
I'm glad it was resolved with the residents, and I'm glad it was resolved, and I like the project.
Commissioner Murray?
Nothing to add.
Commissioner Lavoie?
I'm very disappointed there are no planting pockets. Very recently, we reviewed a pretty extensive document talking about the urban forest, and reading that report would imply that there's going to be a renewed interest and perhaps increased funding to sustain and support that urban forest. And so even the fact that there aren't unplanted pockets are going to be provided, I will not support this project.
Commissioner Rios?
No comments.
Commissioner Schallenberger?
I'm much more supportive than previous now that there are breakups proposed, but I've visited the site. It looks to be a pretty uniform slope. I don't think you have issues with grade as far as determining breakups. I think it's segments of say 60 feet, something like that, that creates some type of rational layout here is doable and should happen that way, I think. And I do think you should have proportional widths here. So in other words, it should be 12 inches linear as well as cross the alleyway as well. Cost-wise, I think it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Having just done something very similar to this recently myself, you have more concrete costs, but you have less pavers costs. So I think it's a wash. So if that were the final design, I could support it.
What's the pleasure of the commission?
Well, it's not, I guess we can't.
Can we give it project design approval?
We need to see details.
We did not give it project design approval yet.
Cannot.
We need to see the breakups and the details.
We did? No, we didn't. Yeah, right. Yeah, we don't really have sufficient details. The color of the concrete's not called out. The width of the concrete's not called out.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner.
I would actually, it's up to the applicant, but I would be more amenable to a contrasting color when you're trying to break it up. You're specifically trying to do that.
Yeah.
I would think that the borders would be a contrasting color in the same family, but.
Mm-hmm. Is this something that could come back to consent?
For sure.
Anybody? Mr. Chair? Oh, I think I heard Schallenberger first.
No,
Mr. Schallenberger. Go ahead.
I move to grant the project design approval with to return for final approval on consent.
Second.
Motion by Schallenberger, second by Drury. What do you want, indefinite or 2 weeks?
Commissioner Schallenberger.
What do you want, indefinite or 2 weeks?
Indefinite, please. Because you're going to want to see the break. The breaks in there.
Mm-hmm.
And can we be clear what's coming? Because it may make a difference to us. If there's multiple breaks at 60 feet and we're talking about 12-inch edge restraints, it may make a difference to us going forward. We're working within a budget that's already been set.
What was the overall, like 230? So that's basically 4 breakups if they're at 60 feet. I would be okay with 3 breakups in that. I think that's kind of a nice proportion.
I mean, you have to see what it looks like.
Yeah, we
That's
do.
sort of the problem.
Does that give you enough direction?
Yeah, but indefinite's fine. I don't know if we'll be able to make it back. I just have to look at our budget. It's already set for this project, and that's going to increase our costs maybe significantly.
Mr. Chair, I would agree with Mr. Schallenberger that the forming is the same cost. Concrete, I think, is cheap, and we're losing 6 inches of paper on both sides. So I think a wash is a good way to describe the cost.
Let the applicant figure out his budget.
But like I said, if you've got a break here and you've got access from either side, then you can get your equipment in and you can do the work. Otherwise, you're lifting it over all of these things. We just did this at Stevens Park, for example, and at Oak Park, and we've got lots of breaks in there, and that drove our costs up considerably.
I was talking about the 12-inch versus 6-inch border.
Okay, and with regard to that, we just have to look at our concrete costs. I think because we're looking at 18 inches deep here, it's not a wash. You're dealing with 18 inches deep of concrete, so we're basically using double the concrete that we would be using here, and we're only saving a tiny space of surface with pavers. You're going from 6 inches to 12 inches, 18 inches deep, so you've doubled your concrete use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so we had a motion by Schallenberger, a second by Drury for an indefinite continuance. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
1 opposition, Lavoy. And abstain, we have Mahan. And I want to remind that there is a 10-day appeal period, and this decision is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of this meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item number 7. This is 107 Jorgensen Lane. This is review of a Phase 2 Historic Structure Sites Report prepared by Post Hazeltine Associates. The report found that the project would be consistent with the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation of the house and immediate surroundings, which were determined to be eligible for Structure of Merit status in a previous report. Ms. Hernandez.
Mr. Chair, before you get started into this, my property, my residential property is within 300 feet of this site, so I'm going to step down.
Okay.
And since the last project is a final, I won't be here. I won't be here for that. I'll look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Ms. Hernandez.
That was pretty slick.
Yes,
Commissioner.
thank you, Chair Studing. I did review the report and do support the report's conclusions that the project does meet the state CEQA guidelines of the MEA.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything to add, Mr. Hazeltine and Ms. Post?
No.
Okay. And then we'll bring it to the commission. Commissioner Drury, did you have any questions about the report?
I do not.
Commissioner Sharp?
Do not.
Commissioner Murray?
Yeah, but I can't locate it.
Okay. You want me to go on?
Go on,
Commissioner
yeah.
Lavoy, any questions?
No
about
questions.
The report. Commissioner Vias, any?
No questions at this time.
Commissioner Schallenberger? All right, we're back to you, Commissioner Murray.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was, let's see, the exterior wall that is going to be altered, is that east elevation? East elevation?
Excuse me, which
alteration? I was a little, I think, there's a, let's see.
This one here?
It was a little, my directions were a little off. So it said, let's see, sorry. There's a plan. There were some walls, the exterior walls that were going to be changed on the east elevation.
I can point it out.
Yeah,
So-
and I was just trying to
Here's the
figure out,
architect.
I think,
Yeah.
oh, there it is. Okay, oh yeah, here we go. Here we go. And
With a pointer.
it's in here.
So,
Yeah, so,
Oh, yeah, please
yeah,
introduce
yeah.
yourself.
Paul
Replace-
Poirier, Paul
okay.
Poirier, the architect.
Yeah, could you?
So this section right here is
Mhm.
existing and it's going to remain. It's the newish garage and the newish accessory room. So as you approach the house, if you went clockwise around the roundabout that approaches the house, it'd still look exactly the same. This little part right here would be all you'd see on the east elevation that's being removed and replaced, which is the enclosed carport. So you see very little from the east. This is all existing here. And from about here to there is about all existing as well. So it's just this little part right here.
Okay, and this is the one that was infield, right?
Yeah, that was the carport.
Yeah, so
Carport in
And then,
1977.
so this
So
is the
they're
part
just
you're
doing-
seeing in the foreground over here. And it'd be from here to about here is the new addition that goes all the way through. And then over here we'll be replacing the cheesy Adobe veneer with real veneer. With real Adobe. thickness, right?
Is that a technical term?
So- well, it was just applied over a 2x4 stud wall, so it's very thin. And you could,
not
it's
standard.
so obvious that it's different from the rest of the house, which is so nice and nice, thick, full dimension Adobe with Adobe finish on the inside versus, drywall and a.
Okay, yeah. That's what I wanted to understand, is that that wall is in the, what was already
Do you have
changed.
any additional questions?
That's it, thank you.
Okay. Comments. We'll go to Commissioner Drury.
Comments of,
Oh, sorry, public comment. I will open public comment. I have Mr. DeForest.
Thank you. I just wondered, because I didn't have time to read every word of the post-Hazeltine report. I presume they feel that the house has been too modified to warrant a historic landmark status. I don't think that was fully, or maybe I missed it, in their report. Secondly, I would like to ask, since this, even as a structure of merit, where does one see the house from? Can any of the public see the house, or is it too back up Jorgensen Lane that it's not visible? Thank you.
Ms. Hernandez?
The house is a designated structure of merit already, so it's been designated. So it does qualify and meets our standards. It hasn't been altered beyond recognition. It looks very much like it originally did still. And these are minor alterations that are actually going to go even more back to its original footprint.
Why can't it be recommended as a historic structure, considering the architect?
He means
Why didn't it come for city landmark status?
Well, can I
Okay,
answer it in
yeah.
terms of what we usually do?
Yes.
Because the building's already designated as
Tim, you need to speak in.
a structure of merit, it's already a structure of merit, as the city historian just stated. We do not reassess significance if the building's already designated. It is a significant resource for the purposes of environmental review, and also it's a significant resource per the city's guidelines. I can't answer to why it was not a landmark, but I do understand that the original report preparer for the original report several years ago for a subdivision was because she had determined it eligible as a structure of merit. And that's what Dr. Brookspan determined.
So in theory, it could be renominated if the owners wish to be renominated as a landmark.
It could be, yes. Okay. Thank you, Mr. DeForest. I'll close public comment, bring it to the commission for comments. Commissioner Drury, did you have any
I
comments?
do not have any at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Sharp, no. Commissioner Murray, comments. Commissioner Lavoie.
I look forward to reading the document.
Commissioner Arias.
Well, I read it, and I think that what is being done is very sensitive. And if the applicants were interested in it becoming a landmark, then they could be eligible for the Mills Act, which would assist in some of the paying of things. It's something you could look into and decide. But I think that the architect has done a sensitive job.
And just for your information, the Mills Act is a tax reduction. So if you want more information about that, you can talk with staff. Did you have something you wanted to add?
I was under the impression that structure of merit falls into the same.
Okay, you need to come.
It does. All structures of merit qualify for the Mills Act as well.
Before it goes.
All right.
Structures of merit and
Schallenberger,
landmarks.
Any comments? No comment. Okay. Does somebody want to then make
I
a
move
motion?
to accept the report as presented.
I second it.
Okay, a motion by Murray, a second by Orias. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
Pardon me, Lavoie abstain?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item number 8. It is the same address, 107 Jorgensen Lane. This is a proposal to demolish 616 square feet of an existing 2,148 square foot single-family residence and construct a one-story, 1,096 square foot addition, which will attach the currently detached square foot two-car garage, an existing 356 square foot accessory structure currently attached to the garage will be unaltered. This is a designated structure of merit known as the Jorgensen Ranch House. Okay, please introduce yourselves for the record and
So I'm Paul Poirier.
give us a brief presentation.
Paul Poirier, the architect.
Rich Goodstein, the owner.
Joy Lee, the wife, the owner. He's the husband and the wife.
You're the owner.
We're all in it together.
We are.
Owner, wife, wife, owner.
You're under the same roof.
I'm the owner.
Join in.
Yeah.
No, that's
Use your money.
All right, he has it. Mr. Poirier.
Okay. Well, obviously they bought this house because they love it. They love the way it is in the main portion of the house. There's really, it was built in a very, very modest size, and it doesn't have a master bedroom. So that's all they wanted to do is add a master bedroom onto the house. There had been kind of a clumsy remodel done in the 70s to convert the carport into a family room that didn't really enhance any of the existing architecture and kind of was a lower grade construction, I would say, than the original construction. And they wanted to see if we could come up with a creative solution to recapture that space, bring it up to the level of quality of the house that the original part of the Pittman portion of the house, so that it has authentic adobe walls. I'm game for doing that. We've done straw bale houses and all kinds of things. I haven't done adobe, but we've been in contact with the guy who did the adobe bricks for the Presidio, and he actually worked on this as a kid with his father. So it should be a fun adventure. Our structural engineer's done some adobe homes before, so it'll be an interesting adventure. At any rate, we did work a lot with the historians to see what was palatable to them in terms of materials. They're very sensitive to the hyphen, as they described it, which was this little section of board and batten on the back side of the building that separated the original single-story portion of the house from the carport section on the original construction. So there was actually a solid wall back here and a solid wall back to the carport there. So initially we had proposed this portion be an adobe. Oh yes. So back here being adobe, but also they were sensitive to having a hip roof here because it has a gable end over here. So we went a little more true to the theme of the original construction, which was to maintain the hyphen on the south elevation. So from this point, it changes from the original adobe to board and batten. The board and batten wraps around here. Underneath this breezeway where these two buildings connect, we would then transition back to adobe, full thickness adobe walls along the front here. And we're going to be reconstructing this little portion of wall here that was the veneer adobe on the front, so that as you enter from the drive, you're seeing realistic adobe, full thick walls on the inside. And as you're inside the house along that front edge, you'd be seeing the inside of the adobe as well. So this is the wall that we'd be
A2.1.
restoring. There was a door on the original house here, and when they remodeled the carport into a living space, they had the unfortunate decision to relocate that door right here just because it was convenient. So what happens is when people come to the house, they get confused where the front door is. So they might find people knocking over here at the hallway door when they're entertaining over here in the living room, and this is the front door, way over here. When there was only one door, it was maybe a little more apparent, but having a door here, so one of our changes is to change this out to a window, so that that'll relieve that problem of confusion. Again, fixing the veneer here, and essentially this is the new construction here. This gable end is kind of done to mimic the mid-century modern interpretation of the adobe structure that was part of the original design that John did, as opposed to having a humongous wood header over the opening to support adobe that's running up a gable end. We're just going to be running some posts up and have the windows run up all the way up to the eave line in mid-century modern style. And that's appropriate for this little den space that serves over here. This end, which is board and batten, is a little more traditional. It just has a standard header and a window on that end. So look at the elevations, you can see that. Colors are a little interesting, but we're just matching the existing color of the board and bat, and we're pretty sure we can get pretty close to the adobe color with the natural adobe. So the new construction really starts from the edge of this existing building here to right here. This is the original adobe structure at this point. This is the master bedroom pop-out. This is looking from the west, so this is the new construction here with some doors that come out to the patio off the side of this master bedroom here. There's a kind of patio series that runs all the way along the back of the house, and so it would terminate here at the master bedroom, where there are doors that could go out to these beautiful living spaces that face a view of the backside of the Riviera. They face out towards, Goleta bound out towards west, out that little valley back behind the Riviera. So it's really a special piece of property, and it was sited very nicely with some incredible views out from the inside of the house as well. The front side, this is where we're putting the windows in, sort of like they did down on this end. And here's that section of wall that's getting rebuilt out of real adobe. And the addition sticks out a little bit, just as the existing carport section does.
Okay.
One other thing we're doing is right at the outside corner, right here of the existing house, there's two windows that come to a corner like this, and the owners wanted to open that up with a pair of some doors that could open up so that corner could just be opened up, so they get more of a blurring of the line between the inside and the outside of the space. Using thin frame, metal framing, probably Torrance type windows like they had done on the original 1959 house.
Do you have a picture of that corner you're talking about?
I'm sure we do. Yeah.
I think that's an important corner.
That's it right there.
There it is.
So what exactly are you doing?
City TV, could you zoom in, please?
Right here, this header will remain, this post will remain, which goes down through the adobe. I'm going to put a pair of French doors there, here, and a pair of French doors there. So basically taking out the sill and taking out the adobe down below, making that into a jamb. And then putting in some doors that match the thinness of the sliding glass doors like this.
That concludes your presentation.
Yep, out of paper.
Okay. I will open public comment. I have no public speaker slips, so I'll close public comment and bring it to the commission. Commissioner Schallenberger, do you have any questions?
On the new adobe walls, how are you going to resist shear forces?
Yeah, we're going to be probably putting in some kind of concrete elements in there, and talk to Greg Stork, and he has a way of either making some kind of concrete frame or something. The current building, I think, relied on the adobe for shear, so we're going to have to figure out some ways to get that taken care of, and we'll probably use some of the interior partitions too to take most of the load off the perimeter walls as a structural concept.
Okay. And then you made a comment that I don't think I've heard before where you said mid-century with Adobe. I don't know that, do you have any other historical examples of that?
I think that's probably one of the things that in the historical report made this building so unique was that it was kind of a mid-century modern Eichler home take on a true Adobe house. And so I didn't make that up, but I got it straight out of their report. And in looking at it, that is what makes it so interesting. The spaces are vaulted. They have beautiful wood ceilings, some trusses inside.
You're familiar with
There
slum stone.
are lots of examples.
More,
I'm not saying it's wrong.
No, we're trying to, we're trying to,
more Cliff May.
very much so.
Yeah, Cliff May is more like.
Very much so. Commissioner Rios, any questions? How about Commissioner Lavoie?
No questions, it's a comment.
Commissioner Murray?
No questions.
Commissioner Sharp?
I think Mr. DeForest asked if this home can be seen from any public right-of-way, and I don't think so.
No, it's at the end of, when they subdivided the parcel, they made a long private drive with a roundabout turn, and even from there you can't see the house.
I wanted to make that clear for Mr. DeForest.
Well, it certainly didn't show up in Street View on Google.
You're probably like an eighth of a mile away from the house at that point.
Commissioner Jury?
Yes, on that same page, could you point out the front door?
Yeah, exactly.
His 92-year-old mother can't find it.
I'm going to try to keep my clients restrained when we talk about the front door because they really wanted to alter the patio on the north elevation to remove the corner post that is, in fact, right in front of the front door.
That one right there in the corner?
So it's right, the door is right in the corner, and there's a post about 5 feet in front of it, right in the center of the door. So as people come, that led to the confusion about not being able to know where to put where to go.
Mm-hmm.
So they turn around and look and see this other back door and start banging on it. But we talked to the structural engineer about offsetting 2 posts so that there was no post at the corner, but that both of the beams cantilevered a little bit, but they just couldn't buy it. They felt that was sacrilege, so we stopped fighting them on that.
So you just, the front door
leaving it as
is where it is, but it's still far away from the proposed master bedroom.
Right, we're doing some minor alterations to the kitchen, but...
And then the only other thing is, I'm looking at, I suspect that there's a breezeway between the master bedroom. Okay, thank you.
It's from the den, and there's a door that goes into the garage on that side, so just in case it's raining, you don't have to walk out.
Okay, comments. Mr. Schallenberger?
No, just generally supportive. It seems like a lovely project.
Commissioner Rios?
I support it.
Commissioner Lavoie?
Several comments, actually. I think it's an appropriate addition. How you're going about doing it, I have some questions about. And one of them has to be the problem the building has and that we're used to seeing his traditional adobes, and the other has to do with it being identified as a mid-century expression of Adobe architecture and Mr. Pittman's other work, which tends to be very modern when he wasn't forced to do Spanish. And in more traditional his Adobe architecture, when a hyphen or things were added that were wood shingled in the front or wood on the front, the roof tended to also be wood. And where they were adobe, they had clay tile roofs. So, and quite often hyphens or the dog runs were infilled with wood, as the Yankees liked their homes more enclosed than the Spanish that preceded them. So typically those wood elements tend to be small things or the enclosure of porches and stuff, not whole wings of the house. So that would lead to the comment that if you were to sort of like express the master bedroom block in Adobe, I'd be more comfortable with it than a board and bat with a tile roof on it. I mean, board and bat really doesn't support a tile roof.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be cement too, because we're high fire.
Yeah. So, and the other part of it has to go with the windows. the windows that Mr. Pittman put on this house are really kind of wonderful in a mid-century sort of way. And you're trying to make it look too traditional adobe, particularly the windows in the master bedroom. Really need to be rethought.
This one here?
Really need to be rethought to be more consistent with the windows that Mr. Pittman put in.
Yeah.
Here on the end. Yep. And the same with this. This needs to be more a mid-century expression of a window.
Sounds good to me.
Than what it is right now. That's the game you can play and still be consistent with this architecture. And I would encourage you to do it.
As long as you guys are supportive of that. We were having issues.
We'll wait till we get down there.
Yeah,
and your front door problem? Painted a distinctive color like blue or red or something that says this is the food. No, find it.
Okay.
That's all.
Great.
Commissioner Murray?
Yeah, I had very similar comments because I had trouble with the clay roof over and also, so I think you got all the comments you needed.
I think the interesting thing...
that window there, will work.
Commissioner Sharp?
Yeah, I tend to agree, and I'm glad you found a guy to do the adobe bricks.
I have
He's
one more
great.
comment when you're done.
Okay, Commissioner Drury?
Commissioner Murray?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We'll go and see.
Commissioner Drury, please.
Yes, I agree with the comments of Commissioner Lavoie and Commissioner Murray. I think it's a very supportable project otherwise.
Thank you. Commissioner Murray?
Yeah, I just want to add that my discomfort also lays with the adobe. And it's just, I know you're going to have a good person, but it's just doing that stuff where it's basically matching the house will be a real challenge. And I'm sure that the historians will be with you, right, monitoring, because that'll be really good.
I have a question for Ms. Hernandez.
Yes.
Commissioner Lavoie's comment about, expressing the newer windows in the same style as the original mid-century, the Pittman windows. Do we run into an issue where that's indistinguishable from the old versus the new, or is this not a... You know what I mean?
I know.
Yeah, standard 9.
Yeah.
That's always
standard
always
9, the
trying
tricky
to
one.
go against what you're saying. I'm just...
It is a little tricky, I think. I always compare it to traditional double hungs. So I'll speak in that. We often approve double hungs to be put in additions that match the originals.
Okay.
So I think it'll work.
Okay.
In my opinion, it'll work. We can reevaluate number 9 you could do an addendum. We might have an addendum to the structures report for that.
Could I add a comment?
Don't you think? Okay.
Well, we need to come up to the...
Well, because I would think because he evaluated these windows under number 9, not ones that match.
Right, you evaluated these windows here.
Yeah.
Those windows.
These proposed windows.
Yeah, those are the... what I was going to say is the corporate wing, when it was open, except, of course, on the rear of it, which was board and bat, which is the condition that's on the photographs in the report. The corporate wing has that wing has always had a tile roof. And that's why we made the finding that if they changed it to another roofing material, they're creating an impact on one of the standards.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's also why we actually, that triple window in the back where the board and bat looks not great, and we realize that. But that was the historic condition. In fact, I think you wanted something slightly different, and we had recommended that because there was a triple window there with a central fixed one light with 2 flanking operable, I think, casements.
Where is that?
That's on the south elevation.
This one.
That actually mimics what's there now, even though it looks like a window out of a tract house. To say, it does. Yeah,
it does.
And
we prefer not to
we
do
were
that,
trying to balance the fact that there is going to be some removal of historic fabric with allowing them to, basically rebuild this wing, which has been substantially altered. But that's why we wanted the board and bat to still be on that side of the building, even though Mr. Lavoie's comment is completely accurate. Traditionally, you wouldn't see that combination.
But
It's
there's
just
precedent
something
for it right here.
in that building. And if they changed it, then it would be harder for us to make this findings under 9 that
On
the
9.
addition is compatible.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Maybe if I had read the report.
Hey, Bill, I think the interesting thing I was going to say was that the roof was originally supposed to be shingles.
Okay,
and
thank
that
you.
they got the tile.
Thank you, Mr. Prey. Ms. Hernandez.
So you will have to come back with the new, just an addendum to reevaluate.
Well, if the
The
applicant decides to keep the tile and the commission is comfortable with
Well,
that, then we
the
won't.
windows.
Oh, well, yes, I suppose, yes, exactly.
Just, I
Yes.
think that for
Yes.
sequel
Well,
purposes, we need to look
the
at
board
this.
in that too, then.
Yeah.
Yeah, the board and bat what we're trying to do is keep that elevation, even after it's rebuilt, to have that pattern it has now, which is mostly adobe, with the east end having board and bat, which is what it historically had. That end of the carport was originally enclosed as a storage space. So that's what John Pittman designed, even though it looks awkward.
Then I would like to revise my comments to remove, or please remove the comments about suggesting that wing be expressed in adobe.
Yeah,
Okay,
I would
okay,
agree.
Okay, thank you.
And the comments about changing the roof.
Okay.
material.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to try and summarize. There's really only 2 comments. The project is generally supportable and is an appropriate addition. I'm going to get hung up here, but additional windows need to be more traditional in the mid-century modern style, or proposed windows need to be more traditional to the mid-century modern style. Is that
Let's again use the word evocative of the mid-century
Yeah.
style.
okay? So proposed windows need to be more evocative of the mid-century modern style,
As expressed in this particular structure.
as expressed in this particular structure.
Could you say detailing to be provided on the windows with future submittals to make sure that they're evocative of that? Because there's no detail here really for you guys.
Well,
to
we're
look
not
at.
going to give you final project. You're going to have to come back.
Yeah.
For details, and details are part of the submittal.
That's right.
Yeah, so I don't need to say it. Unless you
Are you
really
gonna-
want me to.
No.
But, yeah.
I'm just curious if we're being continued to return.
You are going to be continued. Yeah. Okay, so who wants to make that? First of all, do you want a 2-week continuance or an indefinite? 2-week. Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
But don't ask me to read it back.
I'm not going to. I'm not going to. Don't worry.
Please.
Mr. Chair, I'll second the motion, but couldn't we give this
Project design approval.
project design approval?
Yeah.
Okay.
think
Maker
so.
of the
My
motion.
motion would be for
Indefinite continuance with project design approval.
But
I'm sorry, 2-week project design approval with 2-week continuance with the comments already made. Got it? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
Great,
This
thank
is
you.
it. This decision, pardon me?
Chair
What?
Suding, with this single-family house, neighborhood preservation ordinance findings?
For at PDA, we do need to do that, don't we? So would the maker of the motion please
State the golden
state the
rule.
motion with that context? So I'm going to rescind the last motion.
which one? The commission has reviewed the proposed project and found the project is consistent with the required neighborhood preservation ordinance finding per Santa Barbara Municipal Code 22.69.050 as follows.
Okay,
Scratch
strike out
as follows.
All right, so we have, great, a project design approval, indefinite continuance.
2-week.
I'm sorry, 2-week. Why do I keep getting indefinite? Okay, 2-week to the full commission. Motion made by Sharp, second by Lavoie. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. This motion is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of this application, of this meeting. You're on your way.
Nice job. You're running a tight ship here. Man. You guys are ahead of schedule.
I tried.
Nice.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being good stewards of
Thank
this
you
building.
so much.
too.
It's a neat place.
That's important.
Come on up and see it.
We shall.
What time is cocktail hour?
In about 8 months.
8 minutes? 8 minutes? I'll be there.
Sure. There you go.
All right, the next item on the agenda is item
Oh, I remember this guy.
number 9. It's 1936 State Street, and we're more than 10 minutes ahead of schedule, so we need to recess for 3 minutes because we can only be 10 minutes ahead of schedule.
I wouldn't mind.
3-minute recess. January 15th meeting of the Historic Landmarks Commission. Next item is item number 9. It's 1936 State Street. This is a proposal to construct a new 3,500 square foot, approximately 21 foot tall, one-story non-residential building on a 2,466 square foot lot. Final approval of the project is requested. Action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. Project received project design approval and was last reviewed on August 14th, 2013, and those comments were: the project design is commendable. Transportation Division and Engineering Department staff shall look at the circulation operational element, specifically the ingress, egress, and flow of traffic at the State and Mission Street access. Providing a memorandum with staff's recommendations on the same day of the hearing is problematic when the commission is being asked to make findings. Update the conditions to require street sweeping and include planning division staff contact information on the construction sign. The commission has reviewed the proposed project and compatibility analysis criteria have been generally met for this project per SB Municipal Code 22.22.145.b and 22.68.045.b as follows. The project design is compatible with the El Pueblo guidelines and urban design guidelines. The project design is compatible with the desirable architectural qualities and characteristics which are distinctive to the city and the neighborhood surrounding the project. The project size, mass, bulk, and scale and height are appropriate for its location and do not adversely affect the neighborhood or the zone. The project design is appropriately sensitive to adjacent landmarks and surrounding historic district. Development plan finding approvals, CEQA finding, and conditions of approval are made as per staff memorandum dated August 14, 2013. The motion was made by Lavoie. It was seconded by Drury. It was a 6-0-0. Boucher, Sharp, Winnick were absent. Please introduce yourself for the record and give us a brief presentation.
Thank you. Kirk Rudine, architect. Rob Berry.
Rob Berry with Cadence Capital.
And
Chris Gilliland, Common Ground Landscape Architect.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'd just like to let Kirk do his thing, but I'd just like to say we're really pleased to be here to show our final plans and details that Kirk and Chris and our team has been working on now almost 3 years, but I think we've been in front of you several times, and we're looking forward to improving the parking lot out there right now, and we're hoping we can get your approval with conditions, so that's your prerogative, and we're looking forward to see your reaction to the fine details we've been working on here, on landscaping and all that, and like I say, we hope we can get through there very quickly and go in for a permit. We'd like to get under construction this spring if possible and open this thing this fall.
Very good.
Thank you.
Mr. Green.
Thank you, Commissioner Sudine. So we are, we have a set of plans here that I think is detailed sufficiently for a final, but we can briefly just glance at the color scheme which is represented here. I'll go back through the colors towards the end because there's a couple that I think need some refinement, and I brought some refinements. But I did also want to start by reviewing the...
I'd like to hand those to me.
All right. The changes that happened since the last review in terms of the architecture. At the previous review, we had a full storefront from pilaster to pilaster in this location, similar to here and here. We've removed it and instead put in a window identical to the windows on either side. We also had, I believe this was a blank wall, which we've now, because of this electrical room, we've put in a door, obviously, and also changed the siding. This is the one location where we're showing some vertical T&G with a door to match. We also had pilaster to corner storefront along this elevation and have removed that for a small decorative window that's centered in that bay. And we previously had a transformer in this location. We've now, due to necessity, had to move it to this side of the project, and so we've carved out a spot here in this retaining wall that will screen it at least partially from the street. This wall is descending in height. You'll see on the elevation from, I think it's 5 at this corner to 3 at this corner, and then goes down to 2 foot here. And I think that might be. Oh, yes. We had, on the previous submittal, we also had a small 2-foot planter that ran this entire length at the base of this wall. But in thinking about it some more, because of the fact of the footing here, because it had to be, it's an area that is needed to be, the plantings needed to be low enough for back out. It didn't make sense. It seemed that the value of that, the landscaping value of that, was minimal in relation to the cost. And so instead, we eliminated that and put a planter here where we can have plantings that are full height, and which will also be much more visible as you enter the project from the street, from State Street, and also from the street. And of course, Chris will go over the landscape plan and show, part of the ideas that this wall, I don't believe gets over 6 feet. It gets 6 feet at this end, and then it descends in height as the driveway rises. The driveway is rising up to this end. It comes back up to 5 as it pops around here, and then back down to 3 or so here.
So we're cascading some planting over to help screen that wall.
Right. Rather than try and grow up from below, we're going to cascade over.
Now the stepped planting, now a kind of extensive water quality system with the stepped.
Well, this was always part of the civil plan. This area right here is a retention basin. It's a concrete basin. We're not allowed to percolate into the site, and so all of the site surface flow water, as well as the roof water off the building, goes into this planter, and then is slowly deposited to the street. Because of the underground contamination, we're not allowed to percolate. So that was, I think, a really brilliant solution the civil engineer came up with. But what that means is we had a very defined space and depth for this basin. And we have a wall along the sidewalk that's about 3 feet high at this end, descending down to about 2 here, I believe. Yes. And this wall is just below sidewalk height, and it's a little exposed plaster curb that also will get covered with planting. There's planting inside the basin, and there's planting on the upper side of this wall. So the idea is that this intermediate wall would disappear, and there's a detail through this on the civil plan that you can see. But basically, these are both plaster walls. This wall right here is about 1 foot on the State Street side, and then 4 inches to soil on this side. So it's very low impact in terms of low visual impact, and again, it would be eventually covered by planting. That was always on the plan, at least at the last review. So let's see, why don't we quickly go through. Oh, mechanical. This was not shown. So we, as you'll see on the mechanical plan and on the sections, we've shown the height of these elements. We're sufficiently back from the street, sufficiently tall in with our parapet heights and roof heights that, yeah, there they are right there. This is the State Street side. You can see how we're not, in fact, the top of the tallest mechanical unit is still below the lowest point of the parapet. Elevations are a little more developed. As you can see, I mentioned here we eliminated the full storefront in this area, 3 windows. This is also where we had storefront, and we've got a small window with a wrought iron grill. It's a little more detail on the horseshoe arch, and here's the bay on the back side where we're putting vertical siding with the door. Previously, we were also representing that this backside had, which is the parking lot entrance will probably get used much more than the front, the State Street entrance in terms of actual use. We were representing it with the same sort of detailing that was shown on the front of the building, but because we've only got 14 inches of depth between plaster surface and fenestration and storefront, we really didn't have the depth to develop it in the same way. So we took the profile, a slightly simplified profile of what's happening in the front, and applied it to the back. Let's see. This is our little finial that's happening on the southeast corner. Here's the column detail, both in plan and elevation. This is the wrought iron grill on the south elevation here. Here's the small decorative window I was speaking of with the grill. This is the recessed window on the north elevation right here. So rather than frame that entire wall with double framing, we're using a 2x8 wall and just furring out on the inside to get the appearance of depth on the outside. This detail, I believe, has always been on the plan. We've just defined it a little better. And then our window and door details. Just metal storefront and tile base.
That tile there.
Yes, so if you'll notice on the color elevation, basically we're using this patterned decorative tile in, let's see, so there'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 4 more on the back. So there's 9 locations where we would have would be an 8x8 arrangement of 4 of these tiles. And then the field tile would be this green. This is a new detail we incorporated. If we could look at the rendering again. Sorry about that.
No problem.
We were previously had just a terracotta colored round tile coming through the wall in these locations, and one of the commissioners pointed out that might not be the best idea for drainage. In these 2 locations these are functioning overflow drains or through wall scuppers rather. But we liked having a detail in the plaster above the pointed arch. So this is what we came up with. It's a hexagonal tile, the same green color, with just a slight plaster bump out around it. And when we get to the lighting plan, I'll show you where this detail occurs. But basically, we're using this Lucifer fixture that will recess up into the plaster has a very small aperture, 1 3/4 inch. You can either get them square or round, but very small aperture, and those are recessed up in these double wall locations. I think there might be one at the top of each arch. And then there's a couple of locations inside the portico that they're used as well. And then our typical plaster parapet detail. The stairway at the front is, we're showing it just colored concrete, which is, I believe it's pebble as the Davis color, which is also true of the sidewalks that go immediately around the building. It'll have a small tile inset to define the safety to the edge, and then a plaster riser.
Could you tell me what color that tile would be?
We'll probably use the same green, or one of the other colors in that in the sample. So maybe it would be the blue, or probably maybe the blue. Handrail or guardrail details for the ramp areas. And this is just defining a typical top of plaster wall, showing a bullnose corner and plaster finish. So this shows that retention basin that I was speaking of at the front. This is the wall at the sidewalk, which will be plaster. Yes, it is defined. And here's the secondary wall near the sidewalk edge. You can get an idea of the relationship there.
Just while we're here, I know we're not in questions, but does that have to be 12 inches below the top of the wall?
It does. It does, yeah, wow. Because of the required depth and volume that the basin has to be to accept the quantity of water we're putting in it. I don't think there's anything really that pertinent about the civil plan that, other than what we just talked about. Retaining wall details for the site walls. And this is our site lighting plan. Which, let's see, here's the plan with the fixtures. Let's do that. So we have our wall-mounted fixture is Steve Handelman and Lucia. And we're using that in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Did I count that already? 10. 9 or 10 locations around the building. This little chandelier we're going to use recessed up into the portico. This lucifer fixture with a small aperture that I mentioned is shown at the top of each of the arches on both sides, and then a couple spots inside the entrance porch. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pole lights in the parking lot. Here's our base and fixture definition. The lighting that's shown, there's also some wall lights along the steps, yes. Not sure the manufacturer here, I don't think it's labeled. You can see they're very low profile, and would be black to match the other fixtures, which is also defined on the color board. This lighting actually is appropriate to the approval for the signage here, so you may want to take this off the plan since we're not representing the sign at this time. There's a photometric. which I was not responsible for generating, so I can't really comment on it. But if commissioners would like to look at it, of course, you're welcome to. And there's a mechanical plan, as we mentioned, rooftop. And then we're into landscaping, so Chris can take over.
That's all you have?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Kirk.
You can skip the irrigation.
Okay, good.
Just show me where your backflow is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do? What does that symbol mean?
Yeah,
Get it out of here.
And this one is...
All right, come on.
Okay, on to planting plan. The concept, remained the same, and this is just calling out all the plant material. So I'll kind of start with along the streetscapes here. We have existing queens along State Street. We're adding one more to fill in the blank. King palms, there's actually only one currently along Mission, so we're adding 3 more kings as this city street tree. The retention basin is basically full of juncus and condypetalum and mugwort, plants that will survive inundation with water during a rain event, and then will take some drought when it is dry, but it's still irrigated as well. And then we have the acacia cousin it, sort of as a stream bank sort of planting feel. Kirk mentioned that all the water comes in to this area, but we do have the surface runoff goes underneath this ramp and into a little dry creek, which then daylights into our retention basin. Beyond that, I have sort of a palm entry feeling at both entrances, a couple of queens and some pygmy dates, and then we have a small canopy tree here, a larger scale palm here, a Phoenix dactylifera, and a brachychiton Queensland bottle here in this location, and then some additional canopy trees, Tipawana, to provide some relief from the hot sun on the parking lot, reduce the heat island effect. And the parkways obviously kept low to 8 inches for the most part, except where it's red, and we've gone a little higher. So we have the low-fast cotoneaster and some asparagus fern sort of clumped around the tree locations. I mentioned the palms, and then sort of low, clean, green, kind of bulletproof plants, ground cover as you enter in. Some succulents, sort of around the palm, and again grasses and juncus, sort of for that riparian feel. In the front, in these bays that are blank except for the window, we have some vertical aloe. That's Kedongensis, the Kenyan aloe, some daylilies, and some other little miniature succulents. In the corner, again, some Myoporum cascading over the wall to help screen that a little bit. And then, as we move around, sort of a continuation of the feeling at this entry into this zone. So sort of a unification of the both entrances. As we move to the back, of course, we're screening our backflow preventer with some agave tenuata. And on the back hillside, there is some existing tree material. I believe there's an olive and a few other things. We'll be thinning that out. And then I went kind of native with the back hillside, some ceanothus and some pigeon point baccharis. And again, cascading over the wall. We do have some screen material too, some lemonade berry and toyon up against the back here to hide the fence and give the neighbors some relief. And then along where the orange tree is here, we have what I use, I think, a Myrtus, Myrica californica as a hedge material to help screen the hotel, and so they're not looking right out onto the parking lot. I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell, unless you have any specific questions on anything. But then planting and irrigation details.
Okay. you said you had some color
Yes.
options or
yes.
some color,
right.
color stuff to discuss.
Refinements, yeah. I just had a chance to study a little more closely today, and I, on the, if we could, yeah. So we're wanting to do this alternating band around the horseshoe arch, and the original color selection was a little bit too dark and rich, so I'm suggesting that we go with something more muted. And then this also is a slightly muted version of the color that I was suggesting for the recesses and for the tan color around the horseshoe arch. Also, the original black seemed rather brown to me, and even though that was off the HLC website. This is a slightly more black, off black, and I prefer to go with that as a guardrail and fixture color, where the fixtures are paintable. I think this will also be closer to what we would get in terms of a standard color from Handelman. I'm pretty certain about that. And that's it.
Okay. I'm going to let two of the commissioners go look at this in the sunlight. What's left of sunlight. Meanwhile, I'll start with
Back in a couple hours.
Bring refreshments. That's a question on the landscape plan. Are you prohibited from planting trees in the retention basin?
I would venture a guess to say yes. We have about 18 inches of soil in there. We have some pea gravel, and then a
concrete bottom.
And of course, there's no drainage in it. Yeah.
Did you think about doing anything vertical there, though, that could survive in that 18-inch depth?
The biggest I got was the chondropedalum.
Yeah.
It's something.
It feels like from here to here.
A lot of verticality.
It's kind of we're kind of lacking in the verticality, and since this building does sit up from the sidewalk, we're up probably 30 feet above the sidewalk, and we don't have anything. It's more of a comment, but I'm stalling in case you. Okay.
But I take your point.
All right. So we'll start with questions from the commission, and we'll go with Mr. Schallenberger. Oh, I'm sorry, public comment. I beg your pardon, Killam. I'll open public comment, and we have Mr. DeForest.
Yes. I commend this building. It's certainly going to be a great improvement over the gas station. I am concerned about the retaining wall on the north side of the property. What are you going to do with that? It's right now it's sort of white or plaster. Are you going to redo that wall? And how long is it going to take since you're not having a planter in front of it, how long is it going to take to block it out? Obviously, we didn't notice the plaster retaining wall as much when the gas station was there because the gas station hid it, but now it's going to be very visible. The other question is on the lighting. Are you proposing to have those lights on all 24 hours? I mean, all night, or which the neighbors might not, especially the residential ones, might not approve of. So I would like to know what happens. Do you propose to have those lights on all night? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
In the parking lot, that is.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. DeForest. I'll close public comment, bring it to the commission for questions. Mr. Schallenberger? Any questions, Commissioner Reeves? Any questions, Mr. Lavoie? Any questions, Ms. Murray? Mr. Sharp?
Yes. Do you have a detail of where the plaster meets the walk, the concrete walk, and what you plan to do with the weep screed at that point?
We do have a Weeps Creek detail, but it shows it at the planter rather than at the wall. But we would have a maximum 1 inch exposure for Weeps Creek.
And that would not be filled with anything?
We're not proposing to fill it with anything. It's my understanding that in the past we've shown it plaster below, but that's not an acceptable solution to the building department. So I'm open to suggestion.
You'll get one.
I think that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And I understand that there are solutions that the building department will buy where you don't have that 1 inch of raw concrete that
Makes the building look floating,
it's just,
hovering.
These columns come down and they're floating, obviously.
Okay. Commissioner Drury?
Yes, I'd like to ask a question of the landscape architect. It must be really fun to propose yellow wonga wonga vine. That's a comment, but it's also...
Yes.
And the other thing is, a serious question, are there still monitoring stations? There were 4, I think, in that. There's still 2, I think.
Yeah,
So
there'll be ongoing monitoring in the parking lot, as well as a couple of extractions under the building that will go to this temporary remediation compound.
All right.
Eventually, those will be abandoned, but we're coordinating with Exxon on all that work being dropped before construction, then connected up afterwards.
Thank you.
Okay. I have more questions on the lighting. And I'm not really the expert on photometrics, but I understand what they're doing, and I see what's happening here. And we've got 5.7, 4.6, 4.1. I thought I saw some higher ones, but along the property line, and then along the back of the sidewalk. It seems like it's pretty bright. Are there? There must be guidelines. What is an acceptable foot candle at the property line? I just don't know. I think maybe staff needs to look at that. Would you please? And then I wanted to ask the rest of the commission. We were absent, Drury and Lavoie, for a short while, but I asked the question: is it possible to plant trees in the retention basin? The answer was really no, because it's only 18 inches deep. I understand that. I feel like the front elevation is missing some verticality other than what we have as street trees out on the front. Let's go with comments. Mr. Schallenberger.
Excuse me, Chair Suding.
Yes.
Commissioners, I just wanted to make a quick comment. The project was reviewed, the landscape plan was given a review by Rick Welsh in Water Resources on January 8th.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to relay the comments to the applicants that he will be asking for in plan check that the plantings show compliance with the low water use.
Yes.
So it shows sources.
Yeah, I got that message. Thank you.
I've done that exercise before, no doubt. Okay, Commissioner Schallenberger, comments?
No, I've been supportive in the past, and this is just a further advancement of the details. The change of the storefront in the center pilaster breakup, I can support that as well. I can see it almost should be on record too. Depending on tenant, those breakups may change over time. I could easily see that for a retail space, and so I think there needs to be some flexibility as to how that occurs over time. But otherwise, the colors are all within the guidelines, and I kind of like the more richer tones personally, but the muted tones are fine as well. So I would go for project final approval today.
Commissioner Rios? Commissioner Lavoie?
Well, I've always thought this was a handsome design, and I'm very pleased with how it's developed into its final form. Particularly pleased with how the iron has been expressed. You've done a beautiful job of taking that star theme and playing off the richness of that. it's really going to be a lovely little building. I too prefer the richer colors in the color scheme. I think the other is just too washed out. If you're going to do it, do it. If you're not, don't.
I'm sorry, what was that comment?
If you're going to do it, do it. I mean, just go for it. Go for the richer
proposed
color.
colors, not the alternative colors.
Yes, the
proposed
colors except for the black. The black change is fine. The only, however, comments are the boards on the back of the building where the door is. I'd like it a lot better. I think it'd be more appropriate to have those really wide plank, as if it was a huge plank door, of which one section of which was openable, and that one we'll see in Spanish buildings. And along the south property line, I think it'd be a wonderful place to plant poplar trees.
Here?
No.
No, but
to your right.
instead of Tipu.
Gotcha.
Huh?
Instead of Tipu.
Yeah. Well, no.
No, he's got Miraca.
Oh, you mean that one?
He's got a hedge where I really like to see a row of blocking trees. However.
They are deciduous. Too.
That's
Okay,
fine. You still have the structure.
Get to our comments. Could you repeat your door comment?
Oh,
on that?
On the
The
east
rear
elevation, that the planks be, almost 8 to 12 inch planks and be expressed like it was a huge plank door, of which a small section is a small an entrance door, as would be in traditional Hispanic architecture.
Okay, Commissioner Murray.
I have nothing to add. It's very nice. I like it.
Commissioner Sharp.
I wasn't here for the approval.
PDA.
And I have always been concerned about some details that I have mentioned several times. For instance, the depth of the State Street arches versus the opposite side being a fraction of that and so forth. So I still can't vote for the project.
Excuse me. Commissioner Drury.
Yeah, I would agree with the comments about the color. Generally speaking, when you make a bold statement like the color of the dome, and then you have the deep colors of the two arches on the end, it gives you sort of leeway to do pretty much within the guidelines what you want. The arches on the front, how deep are they?
30 inches.
So they're going to be in shadow half the year, and then they're going to be in half light, or actually they're going to be in full light in the depths of winter. The sun hitting it straight. So you have to be pretty careful what colors you put in. I would even say you could put in something that was even more adventurous than that kind of tan color that you propose. There's an opportunity to make a bold statement. Half of the time it's going to be in shadow, but the other half of the year is going to have sunlight on it. And I think that's an opportunity. How deep are the arches in the rear?
1 foot.
Okay. So, the other thing I very much appreciate that you've folded into the landscape plans native plants, which is really a lovely thing. So I think it's a good project, and I support it.
Okay. Just really two comments with respect to the landscape plan. I think that you can probably get some more key vertical plants in there that don't impinge upon the retention of it. I'm thinking maybe some flax, which will get a little bit larger than the chondropetalum. Chondropetalum maxes out at about 4 feet, maybe 4.5 if you're lucky. Yeah. But there are 6 foot, 8 foot flaxes that are available too, and it's certainly an appropriate riparian type plant. The other thing I'm going to want you to study and possibly reconsider is the use of the Phoenix dactylifera. It's been my experience that the climate in Santa Barbara just doesn't support them to their fullest ability, their best ability. You're probably better off with the Phoenix canariensis if you
What is the other option?
Yeah. And then that's it, I guess. I'll summarize the comments then. Unless somebody had anything else. Okay. Project.
That's actually good, Callum.
Yeah, it's fine. It's got plant material that's going to cascade down. It just as fast as a creeping fig would.
It's not one level, it cascades.
Okay. Project as proposed is acceptable, particularly the storefront window change to a solid wall. Proposed colors are preferable to the alternate, except for the alternate black, which is acceptable. Be bold in your color selections. Consider using trees along the south property line instead of a hedge. East elevation door should be constructed with 12-inch planks. Use an appropriate detail for where the plaster meets the flatscape. Intent is to minimize gap. It would be helpful if staff studied the photometrics at the property lines and to perhaps condition the duration of parking lot lighting and study using a taller plant material such as flax in the retention basin. Did I get everything?
Color?
I said the proposed colors are preferable to the alternate, except for the alternate black, which is acceptable. Does that make sense? Okay. Be bold in the color selections.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Lavoie?
One addition to your comment about the 12-inch planks,
Yeah.
if you would add to the end of that, as if it were a heavy door.
The east elevation door should be 12-inch planks made to look as if it were a heavy door.
Clarification on that?
Just a minute. Anybody else? Yes, Mr. Greedy.
Is it the entire bay that you're looking for? Yeah. So it's from the way it was worded, it sounded like it was just the door.
No,
No,
the entire bay.
Entire bay.
Yes.
The entire bay at the east
I think the applicant understands.
Yeah,
I do.
Okay, but with somebody reading it subsequent, understand it. Okay, I'm just going to leave it then.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
I
Commissioner.
make a motion for final approval with any changes to come back to the consent calendar.